Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It's 7 o'clock. It is, of course, Wednesday, the 4th of February, and it is a very, very big and important day, ladies and gentlemen. Not as if yesterday wasn't a very big and important day, or the day before that a very big and important day. But the front page is once again absolutely chock-a-block with stories about Peter Mandelson, stories about Andrew, the prince formerly known as Herbert, as some people used to call him. Charles must now face questions, as the front page of the National up in Scotland. Evidence that damns the Dark Lord from Labour on the Daily Mail. Brown accuses Number 10 of cover-up. Mandelson facing full criminal investigation on the Times. Met investigation into Mandelson over alleged Epstein email leaks. Inexcusable, the front page of the Mirror. And the Sun even goes with, after 2 days of doing Lewis Hamilton on the front page, going out with one of the Kardashians, they finally worked out what the big story is. The Princes of Darkness. And it says, shamed Andy booted out in the night as cops probe second trafficked woman. And shamed Mandy quits the Lords as police launch full criminal investigation. This story yesterday afternoon was getting so incredible that I wondered whether the entire edifice of the Houses of Parliament was going to come crashing down and fall into the Thames. Because, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, this is the biggest political scandal, I said it yesterday, of certainly the last 2 decades and this century. Some people are now saying it's the biggest political scandal since Profumo, and which happened probably a little bit before most people's time. But this really could bring Keir Starmer down. It could bring the government down. It could do all of the things that I said would happen about a year ago, that basically this entire edifice of this ridiculous Labour government will collapse down around its own ankles with its trousers down, because it is completely and utterly inept. It now looks as though it is possibly corrupt, and it's certainly very possibly criminal as well. We've got the man to talk to about this. Stephen Barrett is going to join us, of course, the lawyer, one of our favourite barristers of all time. He's going to run us through what some of the legal ramifications are. And because it's Wednesday, of course, it is Prime Minister's Questions. And so Keir Starmer is going to have to stand up in the House of Commons and listen to a bunch of questions put to him by Kemi Badenoch, who has been pretty good on this whole thing. In fact, while we're at it, we'll play you a couple of clips, one of them from Kemi Badenoch. But first of all, I must ask you to take part in our poll, which we've got going on out there. It is, of course, who is the world's greatest genius? One of the people on this list is embroiled in the Mandelson scandal. But here are the choices for you. Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, Stephen Hawking, and David Mastermind Lammy.
Play Lemmy BT.
Now, shall we have a quick look at what David Lammy said?
Peter Mandelson is a man of considerable expertise. He's the right man for this moment to be our ambassador. He's been a business secretary, a Northern Ireland secretary. Of course, he's worked in the European Commission, and he brings all of that to bear working as our ambassador in the United States. And of course, he's looking forward to presenting his credentials to Donald Trump.
He's looking forward to presenting his credentials to a lot of people, I think. He's been doing that rather a lot. In fact, there's a picture of him on the front page of the Times having his feet massaged. Picture of Peter Mandelson. He's wearing trousers, you'll be pleased to know this time, so he's not sitting in his underpants. He's wearing a shirt and a tie, and he's appearing to receive a foot massage in an undated picture released by the US Department of Justice. And the person who's giving him the foot massage looks like a bloke who's had his face blocked out by a big black block. By the way, can I just point out, just so that we admit and own our own mistakes, inside of the poll that we've got running, which apparently at the moment has got David Mastermind Lammy leading as the world's greatest genius at 50%, Albert Einstein has been spelt wrong. It's spelled Albert Einstein, who I think is probably not the genius we're all thinking of. It's obviously not a genius who's put the poll together, because they've misspelled Albert Einstein's name. So I don't know if we could fix that, please. That would be very nice. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of other stories to talk about, of course, in and around the Mandelson story. One of the things that, as I say, on the front page of the Sun, they say, is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has now moved out of Windsor in the middle of the night. Cops are looking into the possibility the second woman was trafficked to see him for some kind of sexual encounter, right? But I presume now that he's moved out of Windsor, he doesn't have to be called Andrew Mountbatten Windsor anymore. Or you could call him Andrew Mountbatten Sandringham, which is where he's supposedly going to stay. One other story away from that, by the way, which is on page 2 of The Sun, but it's an important one because I think we need to make sure that we mark this particular day. It says here, so Keir Starmer is just one boat away from Britain's worst ever record on illegal channel crossings. Nearly as many small boat migrants have arrived in the 19 months that he's been Prime Minister, same as in 3 years under Boris Johnson. Figures show that 65,703 have crossed the channel since June 2024. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're all still here. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely, utterly ridiculous. By the way, super chats for the moment seem to be not working, so we'll try and fix that. We're not quite sure what's going on there, but if you're trying to send us a super chat and you can't, do let us know. We'll see whether we can complain to somebody about that. But Stephen Barrett is a man that we need to talk to this morning because he is in the House and he's got, I'm sure, lots and lots of advice for Peter Mandelson and Keir Starmer and possibly David Lammy and everybody else who's now embroiled in what appears to be the most cataclysmic political scandal of our lives, Stephen, I think. Very good morning to you.
Yes, good morning to you, Mike. I think this is far bigger, and if you'll excuse me, I am too young to have lived through Profumo, but I was aware of it because everybody becomes aware of massive political scandals. This is so much bigger than Profumo. I mean, this is without question the biggest scandal. So by default of my lifetime. But I think that we've ever seen in the British establishment, and the connections between Epstein and foreign, let's just call them foreign actors, is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and this entire thing is rot, Mike. It's a contagion. It's a failing, an absolute moral collapse in the elite. I mean, just look at Peter Mandelson. That the man has nothing approaching morality, nothing approaching any decency or vague goodness. I have for a long time argued that our society is fracturing along a fault line I simply call "Who would you trust your kids with?" I mean, and Mike, I don't mind saying that you, as a human being, are somebody I would trust my kid with. But Peter Mandelson is definitely not.
No.
I mean, that doesn't even need saying. But this is absolute corruption. This is high level contagion. And I have to say, Mike, for what? What does he want? He just wants money and the paper ownership, title ownership of properties in various places. What a sad
it's
little
grubby,
man.
isn't it? It's very grubby.
It's very grubby. But what a sad little man to live this way. It's pathetic. You and I will both have eaten in terribly expensive restaurants and had all sorts of lovely supposed luxuries. Well, they are not worth selling out your country for. They simply aren't.
No, they really aren't. And so many questions, Stephen, arose. I was asking a lot of them yesterday, and many politicians are now asking them today, because at the end of this road, wherever it leads, is a whole load of horrendous, awful betrayals. Betrayals of the country, betrayals of confidences, betrayals of promises, betrayals of democracy. Even it looks as though there's even I saw late last night an exchange between Epstein and Mandelson where he's basically telling him to try and convince Gordon Brown to stay on as Prime Minister and do a pact with the Lib Dems in order for them to continue to have the same influence that they want to have over Britain. And it's like, please tell Alistair this, and obviously meaning Alistair Campbell, who's gone very quiet, although apparently he's just put a podcast out last night, which I haven't listened to. But the fact is that you have to ask the question, what else did Mandelson give away? And while he was in the ambassadorial residence in Washington, D.C., what was he up to? You almost want to track every single day that he worked for this government and for the Brown government and for the Blair government to see just what damage he's been doing.
Yes, you do. And I also think it's very important that Mandelson doesn't become a scapegoat in himself, because Keir Starmer put him in that residency in Washington.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer handpicked him as his ambassador. So Keir Starmer's definitely on the hook.
Yeah.
We're told that Gordon Brown reported or raised issues with him last September. So Gordon Brown's known for some time. So as far as I'm concerned, he's on the hook.
Yeah.
I don't see how in any way Tony Blair manages to avoid this, because he is the chief operator of all of these people. He is their CEO. Right. I don't see how he can't be connected or involved. And as you say, now there's also Alistair Campbell, one of Britain's least pleasant men.
Yeah.
and all of these people, I just despair, Mike. I absolutely despair, and I really want to just stress this to people. What are they selling out Britain for? This is a what? So they have bigger numbers in a bank account. It's a waste of time. Real life, real life is about having children, raising a family, and being loyal to your country and belonging. Going
Yes.
down your pub, going perhaps as I go to church or wherever you go to worship, being a part of your community, doing a litter pick, being part of everything. These people are just shallow, empty vessels that they have no purpose, they have no reality, and they've gained nothing, Mike, that we can't take away.
Yes.
And I think it is about time that we started to punish these people. I think it's about time that we started to do things like take pensions away
Yes.
and take money away and perhaps take property away. I tweeted last night, we have something called unexplained wealth orders in this country. Now, whatever you think of that, because it's a bit of a threat to innocent until proven guilty, but we've had them since 2017. They are supposedly for politically connected people. And they're for people who you look at them and you go, I don't know how you are wealthy.
Yes.
Please explain where your wealth came from. I mean, you can explain your wealth. You can say, well, I used to earn this much when I was employed. Now I'm self-employed. This is where my revenue streams come from. This is my wealth, and this is what I have. I can explain my wealth. Can these people explain quite how they have this much wealth and where it all came from? And if they can't, let's start taking it off them.
Indeed, because rather like the American system, and it's only relatively recently this has happened, and probably since the Blair era, politicians in this country seem to become very wealthy quite quickly now. Whereas in the past, I mean, when I was growing up in the 1970s, politicians were sort of ordinary people. I mean, yes, there were a few toffs and there were a few sort of Rees-Mogg types who came from landed gentry and all of that. But most of them wore ordinary suits. They weren't dressed in Armani. They didn't wear Creed aftershave. They didn't, fly first class around the world or go in private jets. They were basically ordinary citizens who made a half-decent living, but were not greedy. Now, it seems as though, Peter Mandelson's a multi-millionaire. Now, as far as we know, he's never made more than maybe 120, 130,000 pounds a year in any job that he's done. How does he have a house worth millions and millions of pounds? It's a very good question. And Keir Starmer as well. As you say, let's not focus solely on Mandelson. The Epstein, this is a headline in the Daily Mail, written by Dan Hodges. The Epstein affair is the biggest political scandal of my lifetime. Our Prime Minister says he knew nothing about it. This is why I don't believe him. And so clearly, the other questions that we were asking yesterday and will continue to ask today, either the security services are inept and didn't know about any of this stuff when they vetted him as ambassador to the United States, or they did know, they did tell Downing Street, they did tell the Prime Minister, and he decided to ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, and these are the absolute scandals. And you're right to raise the Americans, because it was an American president who said, show me a man who makes a fortune from politics and I'll show you a crook.
Yes.
And I think we do have to be aware of this. And we've sort of all been slowly boiled in this. Slowly, we've been in a bath where the water's been getting hotter and hotter since the 90s, where it's become acceptable that politicians and former politicians of high office, and in Peter Mandelson's case, almost no distinguishable office, suddenly become very, very wealthy. And it should have raised alarm bells long ago. It should raise alarm bells now. And it's really important that Mandelson doesn't become the sole focus of any of this. That we really need to focus on a lot of these individuals. For a very long time, it has been dodgy with a capital D. It has stunk to high heaven, and I think we need to investigate these individuals. We need to restore the idea that people who are in politics are public servants, not people who are going to cash in.
Yes, I think that's right. Let's have a look at what Kemi Badenoch had to say yesterday, because actually she has come out of this looking pretty good, I think. And she's asking all the right questions. I'm really looking forward to seeing her in action at Prime Minister's questions today, because Starmer will hate this, as we can see from his answers in the past couple of days to anything to do with Peter Mandelson. He's been absolutely hopeless and useless. But let's have a look at what Kemi Badenoch had to say yesterday.
I think it was inevitable. I think it is right that the police carry out this investigation, but we should not let this distract us from the fact that the Prime Minister has his fingerprints all over this. He knew all of the allegations, concerns and reports about Peter Mandelson, knew that he was a close friend and associate of a convicted paedophile, and he still gave him the biggest job in the Foreign Office at a time when UK-US relations are at a critical point. That's what he chose to do, and he's got a lot of questions to answer.
Which you'll no doubt put to him at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow.
Well, I could ask anything at Prime Minister's questions. I think the Prime Minister has a lot of questions to answer, and not just him, but his Chief of Staff and all the people in Number 10 who pushed this appointment. I think it is a national embarrassment. There are many people who should have been given that job or who should have been interviewed for that job, and they didn't get a chance. That's not right.
What do you think about Sir Ed Davies' call for a wider public inquiry once the police investigation's over?
I think it is important that we don't allow the Prime Minister to get off the hook and create a distraction about general things. He appointed this man. I think that's where the focus needs to be on, the person who's actually running our country, who has shown time and time again that he has very bad judgment.
What about the fact everybody's pointing the finger at his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney? Do you have a view about him, or do you think you blame the Prime Minister?
I think that the Prime Minister has to take full responsibility, but there are a lot of questions that his Chief of Staff needs to answer. Who knew what and when? Why did the vetting go wrong? Why did they skip over lots of better qualified people and allow our country to be embarrassed in this way?
Do you think the police should interview the Prime Minister as part of their inquiry?
I think the police will make that call, but if there is evidence that shows that there is something to do with the Prime Minister, then of course, yes. But right now, I think the Prime Minister himself needs to come clean and tell us what he knew and when, and be honest about how this ever happened in the first place.
Incredible. The list of questions just is endless, really, Stephen. I mean, do you have any faith in the system, though? I think that's a question that a lot of people are asking as well. Will the system actually work? Will people be charged with criminality if they are found to have been committing criminal acts? You know, will people be punished? Will people go to prison? Or will it all just be another kind of Westminster smokescreen, which everyone will write about for a few weeks and then it will go away?
Well, I'm actually very concerned that this is being left in the hands of the Metropolitan Police.
Yes.
And I hate to say this, Mike, because, you know, I like to believe in decency and goodness and in the competence of our country and its institutions, but I have no faith in the Metropolitan Police. None. And that's not because I've just randomly decided to have no faith in the Metropolitan Police. It's because of their actions now over years, over a number of years. You know, I can remember, I don't have this curious sort of lack of memory that a lot of our mainstream media have. I can remember when the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police walked out of a press briefing and physically hit a journalist and knocked the microphone out of his hand. That to me was entitled narcissistic behavior. I can remember every single hate march. I can remember when the Metropolitan Commissioner pretended that he didn't have the power to block a march, yet he blocks marches by Christians without a second glance. I simply have absolutely no faith in the Metropolitan Police. I really don't know who decided that they should investigate this. To my mind, at least, that this ought to be at least the National Crime Agency, if not an organisation more superior and more powerful and important than them. But to leave this in the hands of the Metropolitan Police, who they are quite literally Sadiq Khan's poodles.
Yes.
Now, you can argue that will go well for the country, because you could argue that Sadiq Khan is so ambitious that he'd quite like to remove Keir Starmer, so perhaps he will allow justice to go ahead. But But this is ridiculous levels
Well,
of gaming and childishness in our system that we can't tolerate. We need
exactly.
proper independent police.
Because it should not be any of this done at the whim of a single politician or a single political party or whatever it is that is going to end up running. And my first thought, and I tweeted this out yesterday when we found out the police were going to be involved, was, I know what's going to happen now. Every time anybody asks Keir Starmer a question, he's going to say, well, obviously, because there's an ongoing investigation, I can't comment on that. And I bet you he does that today at Prime Minister's Questions.
I bet you he does, Mike, and I bet you that's exactly. I mean, look. Okay, we're being suspicious, but I think justifiably suspicious.
Yes.
But I think that's exactly why it was yesterday that the police announced that they would be investigating this. So that today, Keir Starmer can say, well, this is under investigation by the police, so I cannot talk about it. You know, and this is absolutely ridiculous. And I have a slight worry with Kemi Badenoch. I have a slight worry with the Conservative Party that they've bought into a lot of these lines that they are, because these are legal questions about legal risk.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that if Kemi Badenoch asks him a question about this, that she's ever going to face criminal challenge or possibly criminal conviction under the Contempt of Court Act.
Right.
I don't think anybody is ever going to realistically argue that any potential future trial of Peter Mandelson or of any politician has in any way been prejudiced. If you put Mr. Justice, I don't know if people remember, but the judge in the Axel Rudikabana case was Mr. Justice Goose. Mr. Justice Goose is tough as nails. You put Mr. Justice Goose as the judge in charge of any of these potential future trials of anybody, and I'm not speculating on who they were, but put him in charge, and you're not going to tell me that a trial has been prejudiced. So actually, I think it is about time that we ask very important questions, and I really hope she doesn't cowardly, chicken it out today, because she's in a unique position, and I think at the moment that's politically quite questionable because there are all sorts of political forces now in our country. They're not necessarily well represented in the House of Commons. I think it is legitimate of Nigel Farage and Reform to complain that they don't get enough coverage in the House of Commons, that they don't have enough power there. I think it's also legitimate to say that the Lib Dems do get enough coverage and power and they don't use it for anything. They are literally a waste of space. But it's all going to fall on her shoulders. I don't want her buckling. I don't want her cowardly running away from the fact that these important questions have to be asked and forcing him to answer. The other person I think who we should focus a lot of attention on today is Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, because time after time after time, he allows the Prime Minister to and I hate to say this, Mike, but if anybody wants to sue me, I'm pretty sure I can back it up with evidence. He allows the Prime Minister to mislead the House.
Yeah.
He allows the Prime Minister to lie.
Yeah.
And most important, and that's irritating. That's morally wrong. And that just gets under your skin. But procedurally, more important than that, he allows the Prime Minister to avoid answering the question.
Yes.
Lindsay Hoyle could prove himself a man of honour today if he forces the Prime Minister to answer the question.
Yes.
Kemi Badenoch can improve herself in all of our eyes if she actually asks it. But are we instead going to look at a cowardly farce where everybody is terribly worried about the potential of prejudice?
Yes. Well, and again, this is legal.
We've lived through.
And absolutely legal speak is, I've had many conversations with you and others about this, that, when I was working in Fleet Street, we knew very well what the contempt of court laws were. They haven't been changed. They haven't suddenly been updated. Contempt of court can only be, or the likelihood of prejudicing a trial can only be happening once a case is active. And they've now tried to change the definition of an active case from one where somebody's been charged to one which is now being investigated. And as far as I'm concerned, until somebody's charged, there can be no contempt. There can be no prejudicing of a trial. I don't care what any legal mind says or any government minister says, And surely as well, Kemi Badenoch's protected by parliamentary privilege anyway, isn't she?
Yes, she absolutely will be. So she will have no excuse if she chickens out today. She is the vessel through, because of parliamentary procedure, because of how the votes landed, because of everything else, she is the one chance the nation has today, and she cannot be allowed to buckle out, to cowardly run away, or to hide behind some pretense of legal procedure. That it's really important that we man up as a country. And I absolutely, I mean, if anybody tried to charge me with contempt of court, I really would just I'd probably call Mr. Justice Goose as a witness.
Yes.
Because, he's more than capable. And he's not the only good judge we've got. We've got a lot of good judges. But I like to focus on him because he was so masterfully, just judicial, just powerful, just push all this nonsense aside. But our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who is a weak and manipulative man, he likes to try and pretend that there might have been something that is technically wrong under the law. It is manipulative,
yes.
and it is wrong. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't imagine, I think, in the old days, going on the media and putting on silly voices and mocking our Prime Minister. But we are where we are.
Yes.
And this has to be called out. This absolutely has to be called out. And you as an old school journo are absolutely right to do it too, Mike.
Yes.
We have to do this for the young people because they don't know better. They trust our leaders. They believe that the Prime Minister is telling the truth, and it's our job to go, no, he's lying through his teeth.
Yeah.
I hope Kemi Badenoch calls him out today. Let's see what she actually does.
Yeah, we will see coming up at midday today, and we'll obviously be reporting all of that tomorrow and possibly later on this afternoon. The other thing that I think is interesting that's come out of all of this is something that I've sort of banged on about for a long time, and that is this kind of Westminster circle where whether you're a journalist, whether you're a civil servant, whether you're a politician, you're all in the same game together. And there's been an awful lot of evidence of why that has been the reason none of this has ever come out before, because nobody really asked the right questions. I did an interview with Liz Truss the other day, and I said the problem with journalists now is they're not curious anymore. They haven't got that sort of instinct to ask a question. They'd rather see themselves on television. They'd rather get invited to Downing Street. They'd rather be on the Prime Minister's plane when he goes to China. They don't really want to upset the apple cart, and no greater protagonist of that than Adam Bolton, right? He put out a tweet when Peter Mandelson was appointed ambassador to the USA, in which he said, Peter Mandelson is the only politician not to lie to me. He will thrive in the United States, right? Now, he compounded that yesterday by appearing on Sky News, which I watched through gritted teeth yesterday afternoon. He actually appeared sort of as a witness for the defence, if you like. He came on and said, Peter Mandelson has always been a very honourable man. He's always treated me with respect. He's never told me a lie. And he said it's rather distasteful to watch some of the glee that some people seem to be enjoying at his demise. And I'm going, this can't be happening. Surely Adam Bolton is not defending Peter Mandelson, but he was. He was actually defending him. And similarly, Sophie Ridge, Sky presenter, put out a tweet yesterday morning saying the reason everybody likes Peter Mandelson is he's a very charming man and people like to be around him. And that's possibly a mistake that we've all made. And I'm going, what are you people, 7?
Yeah.
Why have they allowed themselves to become sort of entrapped by this system?
Well, I think the first thing to say, Mike, is that I am a human being and I keep my own counsel on who I respect and who I do not respect. And I have absolutely no respect for Adam Bolton. And I have almost no respect for most of the Sky journalists in particular. I think structurally, what we have to look at is what is happening in journalism. And let's be perfectly honest about this, Mike. What's happened over the last 10, 20 years is that the money has fallen out of journalism. So I don't personally believe that Sky News makes a profit in any way, shape or form. At which point it becomes just a vanity project for somebody who's willing to take, or some people who are willing to take the financial loss of maintaining that system. At which point there is then no motive on any of those so-called journalists to do anything other than maintain the views and spread the views of the people who pay them. Yeah. It's a patron that becomes a patronage system. I believe in the healthy competition of free markets, which is what you're envisaging, what this show represents, because you're out there on the frontier. You will win or lose, sink or swim. swim based upon your viewership, based upon your hits, based upon the advertising revenue. You're at the cutting edge of monetization. And I think money and the threat of profit keeps people pure. And I think journalism has sunk into a quagmire because it simply doesn't make any money anymore.
Right.
And I'd really like us to go back to a stage where journalism is all about making money, because the more it makes money, the more the journalists care only about what people are interested in, care only about, getting views and clicks. That's it's not a bad thing. This is a good thing.
Exactly.
It keeps journalists pure.
Yes.
And in the absence of that, I don't know how many viewers Sky News has. I strongly suspect I can
Not
count
many.
them on both of my hands. Well, exactly. And so they have no interest in actually, saying anything that is truthful or good. Their sole interest will be, and again, they really can't sue me over this. There's something called Section 3 of the Act now. But their real interest will be solely in spreading the views of their paymaster.
Yes, that is the problem. And that's what they call news. And unfortunately, as a result of that, the real news doesn't get discovered because they never ask the right questions. They never look for the real, the idea that Peter Mandelson has been fired from his job at a very high level of government more than, 3 times, I think. This is the third. And that he's still somehow welcomed back in with open arms to the club every single time. And even an interview yesterday in the Times, sort of admonishing himself, saying, well, I've been a victim here. I feel like it's been a drive-by shooting and, because he recorded it all before all this evidence about the emails came out. And you just think, they're playing along with him. They're going, oh, look at this charming man. He's got a lovely house in Wiltshire. Let's go and talk to him and have tea with Peter Mandelson. And he's lovely. And therefore, how could he be doing anything wrong? It's insane.
There's another point, Mike, that I'd really like to make about Peter Mandelson. I think most of his career, because, so I'm bisexual, and same-sex attracted men were oppressed. That there was a period in which we suffered terribly, where we were mocked, we were not accepted in society. There was then an overcorrection, to my mind. And to my mind, Peter Mandelson has coasted on the fact that he's gay. He's got away with stuff that a heterosexual man would not have got away with because he's gay. There's a sort of using it as a shield thing. Now, as a bisexual, all I've ever wanted is acceptance. All I've ever wanted is equality. You don't have to, you don't have to do anything more than that to me. I don't want special treatment, and I think it's really important that Peter Mandelson doesn't play the gay card. I saw him doing it a little bit yesterday, suggesting that he's not connected to the wrongness of Epstein because Epstein's Island was all about, abusing young girls. It's like, well, no, you're still a wrong one.
Well, we still see he's in the papers this morning having a foot massage, which isn't a great look, to be honest.
No, and this is just abuse of people. But I do not let him play the gay card. I do not let him play this. It is not acceptable. If we are to have true equality, which is all I've ever wanted, then wrong-uns who are same-sex attracted are as bad as wrong-uns who are heterosexual. That's true. We can be good, and I think I'm a morally good person, and I try to be a good dad, and I try to tell the truth in the media, but we can also be bad. We're allowed to be bad too. That's another form of equality. And if Peter Mandelson's allowed to play the gay card, I will get incredibly angry. I just, that is not on. But I think for a large portion of his career, he was able to do that. And when they say, oh, he's a lovely person and we have tea with him in his house in Wiltshire, I think what a lot of them are saying is that he's gay, so he's suffered. But no, this is water under the bridge now. Yeah. Thank goodness our society is accepting and kind and lovely, which it is, and which I'm very grateful for, and I think we always should have been. And it's a good thing that we are where we are, but that means he gets no special treatment based upon his identity. No special treatment just because he's gay.
Yeah. Absolutely right. A lot of people supporting you in that and saying, well done for saying it. Stephen, brilliant as ever to talk to you. It's going to be a very interesting day in Westminster. We're going to be very, very busy and we're going to be glued to Prime Minister's questions to say at midday. Great to see you, Stephen Barrett. What a man. Fantastic. The greatest friend anybody could ever want. And great barrister as well, by the way. And a man who knows the law inside out. So he says, like me, this is a massive, massive scandal. It's bigger than anything that's ever hit Westminster, certainly in this century, and very possibly in our lifetimes. I mean, yes, I was around, I think I was alive, but just about when the Profumo scandal was going on, but I don't remember it terribly well. Everybody knows the story about Christine Keeler, the prostitute who was sleeping with both the government minister, John Profumo, and a Russian embassy spy, supposedly. This is worse, because we don't even know how far this goes. And of course, we haven't really even mentioned the royal aspect to it. That's an interesting message. What the hell is that? Somebody sent a message in what looks like Chinese. Does that come from the new guys building the embassy over in Tower Hamlets? You know, Starmer's mates have started to spam the show. Absolutely extraordinary. So we need to talk about Andrew. We need to talk about the royal connection, because that hasn't gone away either. We also need to talk about the former Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, who's also in an awful lot of these emails and an awful lot of these communications that have come out in the last sort of 48 hours or so. So who better to talk to than the Queen of royal coverage, the Queen of Hollywood? It is the one and only, ladies and gentlemen, Kinsey Schofield. Very good morning to you, Kinsey.
So good to see you, Mike. This story is gasoline on an open flame. It feels like it's never ending, huh?
Yeah, it really is extraordinary. And I'm just reading today, in addition to the news that we woke up to this morning, that Andrew has disappeared from Windsor in the middle of the night and gone to Sandringham, and seemingly because his brother, the King, kicked him out and said, this is now reaching kind of epic proportions. You've got to go. I'm now reading a story in the Times about Sarah Ferguson appearing to send a flirtatious message to Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction for sex offences, suggesting a woman who has a nice body that he might want to marry.
Oh yeah. She like offers her friend up, her single female friend with a great body that he should meet. In another message, she says that they should get married and then hire the woman, I
Yeah.
believe, that she was trying to set him up with previously. It's also interesting to me that this is all happening again after he's he's been convicted
Yeah.
of soliciting a minor. She puts her two princesses, her daughters, on a plane to visit him after he gets out, and then asks him to pay for it. And it's over
Yeah.
$15,000 for their flights.
It's unbelievable. And also the brazenness of the note, which is sent by her assistant. You know, are you okay to cover these flights? You know, the Duchess will go in business, which was generous of her not to ask for first class. And the kids will go economy. I mean, it's so grubby. I mean, I know that you're in America and I'm in Britain. I feel sort of tainted as a British individual by this whole scandal, the Peter Mandelson aspects of it, the Andrew aspects of it. It's making us all look like beggars. You know, let's go hang out with the rich American guy. Never mind what he's done. He can pay for our flights.
Yeah, well, over here we're getting a lot of the American side. You know, after months of defying congressional subpoenas, Bill and Hillary Clinton
Yeah.
have agreed to finally testify in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Epstein. And it looked like this was a last-minute decision out of fear that there was a scheduled vote approaching that could have referred them to the Justice Department for possible prosecution. Then we have Elon Musk, who we've seen speak out so much against Jeffrey Epstein in the last few years. He did an interview with Vanity Fair where he pushed back on what a creep Epstein was.
Yeah.
But then through these emails we see in 2020 or in 2012 and 2013, Elon's basically begging Epstein to hang out with him, saying what day/night will be the wildest party on our island. Now, I will stress that I don't believe that trip actually ever came to fruition, but you know, you're talking about begging, and we're seeing a little bit about, a little bit of that over here too. The Bill Gates stuff. So
Yeah.
we have some unsavory characters over here as well, or some unflattering communication in the United States as well. But when it comes to Prince Andrew, this could jeopardize the future of the monarchy. If Prince Andrew former Prince Andrew, did anything illegal, and there are new allegations today. There's a stripper saying that she participated in a threesome with Epstein and Andrew and was never paid for that. She was supposed to be paid $10,000. There's another young woman from the States that was flown to the UK to meet with Andrew, according to some of this communication,
Right.
had tea the next day at Buckingham Palace, got a nice little tour. If he is accused of doing anything illegal, if there is any trafficking involved here, we are looking at serious consequences for the British monarchy.
Well, certainly the police appear to have been called in to look at this second woman who supposedly flew in. I mean, again, some people are asking the question, well, was she trafficked? Did she come willingly? Is it an offence? Andrew may well be one of the sleaziest men that's ever walked the earth, but has he done anything illegal? Hard to say, hard to prove, maybe. But certainly there now seems to be enough evidence to suggest the police will want to interview him. And that in itself surely damages the monarchy, because here's the brother of the king being interviewed about potential kind of sex offence.
It's true. And it's interesting the conflicting leadership we have at the time when it comes to the Epstein files, because J.D. Vance is very much like, no, we should hold everyone accountable that's done anything wrong. Should Andrew testify in front of our government? Absolutely. Like, let's get him in front of it. If they choose to do that, let's figure out a way to do that. Whereas Trump is very much like, this is a distraction, fake news. So we do have government officials weighing in here and saying maybe Andrew should have to sit down and answer some very tough questions. But to that, I would argue, we all saw that BBC interview. Is this a credible witness in any way, shape, or form? I would stress not.
No, although almost everything he said in that BBC interview with Emily Maitlis has now been disproven and shown to be a complete and utter sort of tissue of lies. But one newspaper here today, The National, which is up in Scotland, is now quoting, I think, a Scottish MP saying Charles must now face questions because we need full disclosure about what he knew about what his brother did, about why his mother, the Queen Elizabeth, paid Andrew seemingly several £million to give to Virginia Giuffre. There's a lot of questions being asked. And of course, soon, we believe, there's supposed to be a royal visit, the King coming over to the White. We'll get her back. Extraordinary coverage in the papers today. Andrew balks as Epstein's scandal grows. It says in The Sun, ex-Duke skulks off to Norfolk in the middle of the night. He's booted out of mansion early. But the farmhouse where he's supposed to be moving into in Sandringham, on the Sandringham estate, is apparently not quite ready. And according to The Sun as well, Matt Wilkinson, the royal correspondent, the woman in question who was given a tour of Buckingham Palace that we just heard Kinsey Schofield talking about there, says that her lawyer, Brad Edwards, says, we're talking about at least one woman sent by Epstein to Andrew. Thames Valley Police have said, we are aware of reports about a woman said to have been taken to an address in Windsor in 2010 for sexual purposes. We are assessing the information in line with our established procedures. At this time, these allegations have not been reported to us by either the lawyer or their client. Andrew has always denied wrongdoing. Well, I don't know why the police would say that. But anyway, yeah, so thank you. We've got Kinsey back. So the royal visit by the King, which I don't know whether it's been officially announced yet, but, it's meant to be happening this year, isn't it?
April. Yeah, we expect it to happen April. We also expect to visit from the Prince and Princess of Wales potentially over the summer. But you're right. I mean, sources close to Beatrice and Eugenie have told the Daily Mail that they do believe that the King and Prince William knew there was more scandal on the horizon. There was a trip to Brazil that William took in November, and someone had apparently overheard him talking to someone about Andrew, where he said, I wish I could say more, but I can't. We were all surprised at how aggressive they were last year and wondered if there was something they knew that we didn't. And there are also email communications, documents that say that Andrew considered abdicating after he was photographed with Jeffrey Epstein in Central Park. And the Queen actually dismissed that and said, no, just get a job. could she have been harder on him?
Mm.
I think the answer is yes. I wish King Charles would have acted sooner, but I also wonder if the Queen could have been more
Yes.
aggressive with her alleged favorite son.
Well, I think what happened was that they all sat around and thought, if we do this one thing, that will be the end of it. And they probably did it because they thought, this will draw a line under it. But again, quite often, as we've seen in history with the royal family, their advice is bad. And so they do something with an expected outcome. And of course, the outcome is completely different. And because this story is getting bigger, as you said, by the day now.
And I also don't believe that Andrew was honest with his own family about what he did with Epstein or what could potentially come out between him and Epstein. I am imagining that he was as dishonest with them as he was with the BBC.
Yeah. And with himself, obviously, as well, because he clearly doesn't think that he's done anything wrong in his life. He's had this kind of charmed, rather spoiled little boy kind of lifestyle. I can't imagine what he must be thinking. I can't imagine what it must be like to even be him. I'm not trying to offer any sympathy up for him, but what a terrible, terrible way to have to end your life, as it were. The final kind of, 10, 20 years of his life. He's just going to be sitting in a room staring at the four walls.
He's got a beautiful venue. He has he's beautiful scenery. You and I aren't going to be looking at scenery like that, no matter how well we behave going forward.
Yeah.
We'll be lucky if they allow us to have a kitten calendar on the wall of whatever asylum they throw us in. So I have very little sympathy for him. I think he needs to shut up, go away, be unseen, become a gamer, sit on whatever game he wants to play. I think he looks entitled and completely out of touch every time he is on a horse, enjoying the vitamin D. And he's just making things worse for not only the working royals, but his two daughters.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, Sarah Vine, one of the big columnists here in the Daily Mail, has written a massive piece today just about that visit, saying what motivated Sarah Ferguson to take her young daughters to visit a convicted paedophile and then later email him about Eugenie's sex life in a way that is just creepy. And it really is. She's actually coming out of this looking even worse than he is in some ways.
I would die if I found out that someone was messaging about a shagging weekend. Oh my gosh. No, it's mortifying, but I would also stress, how much have they benefited from some of their parents' inappropriate financial relationships? I think we're going to learn more about that, and I don't think it's going to reflect well on them. And I think it's going to cause King Charles to have to reevaluate how much of a presence they have going forward.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a shocking state of affairs, but for journalists, it's absolutely kind of manna from heaven because, I come in yesterday, I did a little video for our Substack and I was just like, I literally can't wait to get back to the show tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock because today we've got Prime Minister's questions. We've got Keir Starmer, who's going to stand up in Parliament. He's going to have to answer questions from Kemi Badenoch about Peter Mandelson and his role. That's another thing that's being asked is that, what else did he get up to when he was ambassador in Washington to the United States of America? Who else was he pandering to? Who else was he doing deals with? How many secrets was he giving away? Are the Russians involved? This story's literally got everything.
Why not? Why briefs and not boxers is my question.
Well,
why briefs and not boxers? I'm traumatized by what I've witnessed in the last 48 hours.
Absolutely right. And this morning's picture, he's thankfully fully clothed, but he's having a foot massage on the front page of the Daily Telegraph and the Times. And you just think, oh my God, you just don't want to know what happened after that.
That's very true. At the end of the day, we're learning that you are who you associate with. It's like, honestly, no offense. I apologize in advance to Kevin Bacon, but there are so many people mentioned in the Epstein files that I have no relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There's just a casual email saying I saw so-and-so, I met with so-and-so.
Right.
And this has been so destructive and had such a negative effect on people's lives. And I look at how vulgar Andrew was and Peter, and I think that it's unfortunate that because their actions were so sinful, I guess I could say, that is having serious repercussions on other people's lives who are just like casually mentioned in a big
Yeah,
file dump.
sure. Absolutely right. Well, I'm not mentioned in it. I've never been anywhere near Jeffrey Epstein. I'm happy to report. And
I've never been happier to be poor and boring.
Well, you're never boring, Kinsey. You're getting an awful lot of love on the chat this morning. Kinsey looks amazing, says John. Great to see Kinsey, says Dawny. People are saying, well, they love your eyes. I mean, you know, if you're ever in need of an ego boost, just check our YouTube chat, and you'll be getting.
Thank you so much.
You'll feel very good, and you look fantastic. Great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on. I know it's late there, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you. Good to see you. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you very much. Kinsey Schofield, what a beautiful woman, and what a beautiful soul as well. And as she says, quite rightly, not mentioned in the old Jeffrey Epstein files, neither one of us. So thank goodness for that. This is the Mike Graham Show, of course. Coming up, we're going to do Plank of the Day, and then we're going to tell you a terrible story about what happened to somebody who went to Dubai to start up a new life and ended up going terribly, terribly wrong. Because of the authorities and a clampdown on his personal business. It's all coming up after this.
Don't you relax and be a bit more MG? That would be a triumph.
Good morning, it's Wednesday the 4th of February. I'm Edward Hughes. Oh joy, another glorious Wednesday in Blighty. Peter Mandelson's Epstein fanfiction emails have finally torpedoed him, leaking Gordon Brown's resignation and Eurozone bailouts like it was casual WhatsApp banter. Police now probing the former business secretary for misconduct in public office. I wouldn't want to probe him. Shocked? No one is shocked. Prince Andrew gets yet another Epstein remix. Fresh claim a woman was trafficked to the UK for him. Palace probably updating the Pizza Express alibi PowerPoint as we speak. Lucy Letby doc drops on Netflix. Some doctors who helped convict her now admit a tiny doubt about the medical evidence. Brilliant timing. Justice system really nailed it first time. Probation service basically one missed email from total collapse. Public safety? Optional extra, apparently. Prison drone deliveries at 43% because nothing says rehabilitation like Amazon Prime for contraband. Junior doctors vote to keep the strike option simmering for another 6 months. NHS winter crisis. The gift that keeps on giving. And experts warn the UK could face a proper food crisis if war, cyber attacks or weather decide to gang up. Stock the beans, folks. Posh Waitrose ones are probably tariffed soon anyway. There. Britain 2026. Scandals we've seen before, services on life support, and the weather about to bury us in snow. As Talking Head said, same as it ever was. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
That was Edward Hughes with the news, of course. Now, coming up in the next hour, we've got loads going on, including a conversation more about Keir Starmer and Prime Minister's questions. We're going to be joined by Sarah Pochin from Reform, and also we're going to be joined as well by William Clouston from the Social Democrat Party. Also, we've got to bring you news on the heron front, because as you might know, there was a big hoo-ha yesterday about the disposal of the heron in the bin, and we were going to go out and try and find it. We'll give you the result of what that search uncovered, and what we're about to announce, I think might shock you. So we'll tell you all about that coming up after the news at 8 o'clock. Right now, though, we're going to speak to Radha Sterling, who's the CEO of Due Process and detained in Dubai, which is something that perhaps many of you may not know about. But it's a story that will shock you, I think, probably, about a grandfather, a 63-year-old grandfather, who was inside of a Dubai prison for years and years and years, beaten, tortured, subjected to egregious human rights abuses. He's finally been released, and he's finally got back to this country. And he's now going to pursue the UAE for a claim of compensation, I believe. Let's say a very good morning now to Radha Sterling. Radha, very good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you too, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Tell us the story, if you can, briefly, just as to what happened to this man.
Absolutely, and it's a really common story. It's not that it won't happen to you if you go to Dubai, but he went there, started a business, enjoyed actually a significant amount of time there, almost 20 years. So he was essentially an expat, although he did spend time in London throughout. But he was accused of bouncing a check, which is a criminal offence in the UAE. And despite expert evidence and the government's own experts saying it wasn't his check, he never wrote this check, and he had no criminality whatsoever, the prosecution went ahead and he was sentenced to many years in prison. He ended up spending 4 years in prison in total. But the difficulty that I think he really encountered the most is that the British government, wouldn't help him at all. So essentially said, you're on your own. The FCDA was very unhelpful. They said, look, we can intervene in cases of torture or significant human rights abuses, but we're not going to assist you in cases of injustice or where you've been wrongfully accused, or where it looks like the government itself or other people in Dubai are simply fabricating charges against you in order to loot your companies, loot your money. Because what happens, they take a false case against you, the prosecution will convict you in court. They don't require evidence, it just requires a sympathetic judge. And that's all of them, because if they don't rule in favour of the prosecution, they're at risk of being deported to Egypt, where most of them come from. So you've got this systemic corruption and issues within the judicial system. So essentially, this is an entrepreneur. He was very successful, which made him a target of the justice system. That meant fabricated allegations were made against him, and he automatically was convicted, sentenced to prison, where he was beaten, tortured, kicked in the head, forced to drink from a toilet, and the list of violations went on. This is a very, sweet grandfather who I've got to know over the past few years, and it's just amazing that they could even do that to such a sort of frail man. He had broken bones, and the government really wouldn't do much about it at all. Now, it was only when we took it to the United Nations and got rulings against the UAE for this arbitrary detention did the UAE start taking it seriously and saying, okay, look, we're going to have to let him go. Now the UN has intervened and said he was arbitrarily detained, the evidence was fabricated, and he's been completely exonerated and released to London. Now it's important that he seeks justice. It's important that the British government is held to account and that the UAE is also held to account. It's a difficult task, obviously, bringing a foreign government to justice, and you have a lot of issues there, but there are criminal elements here, and we want to take out criminal actions in the UK against them.
Right. And as far as the torture goes, and those things, the terrible kind of abuses that you mentioned, was that not, could you not convince the Foreign Office that was true? I mean, because if they say that they're going to represent someone who's being tortured, and then you say, well, here's the torture, and they say, no, we don't believe it. I mean, was that what they said?
I didn't say that. They did call for an investigation by the UAE. They brought in medical doctors, what the UAE government did to appease the UK government, and they agreed that he had been tortured. But the British government was lied to as well. The UAE said he'd been given his heart medication, he'd been given medical treatment and so on. And the family told the British government, no, that wasn't true. And really, they wanted to wipe their hands of it as much as they could. And it was only when we, requested assistance from members of the House of Lords who took a serious interest, did they actually do something? But even then, it was really limited. They absolutely didn't do what another government would do. For example, I've been dealing with J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and the Irish government as well, the Canadian government. I've seen what they do and how they go out of their way to ensure the treatment, the good treatment of their citizens and their release. I raised a case to the US just a few months ago, and it was intervened in immediately. And that citizen, those two citizens, three actually now, were pretty much immediately sent back to the US. Now, the UK has a stronger relationship with the UAE, and they should have been able to do the same, and probably faster. So it's a deliberate decision that they're making not to help British citizens in trouble there. The problem is, that they're creating a terrible investment environment in the United Kingdom where entrepreneurs and business people want to leave the country, and Dubai seems like the ultimate destination for a lot of those people. the travel warnings that the British government reports on their website are totally insufficient. They don't cover the serious risk that entrepreneurs especially are at when they go there. And when they do get into trouble, they don't help. So it's obscene that this environment is being created in the UK where people don't want to have business there. They don't want to, they don't want the new digital ID. They don't want to be reporting to Companies House all of their personal details. It's unnecessary. They don't like the economic style of the UK now under Starmer, and it's just unfavourable in a tax way. So you've got competition now. You've got Arab, Middle Eastern countries offering them a better business solution, perhaps, and they don't understand necessarily that that comes with certain risks, and the British government isn't doing anything to help in that respect. I think they're atrocious. I think we saw that with tourist cases as well. For example, Marcus Fakana, that was all over the media last year, that the British government didn't help, that David Lammy, as the foreign minister at the time, should have been able to get him home so quickly and had no interest whatsoever. So the British government are really not doing anything to help citizens abroad. And we've had deaths in custody. And now we've had a case of the actual torture of a British citizen. I think the US wouldn't put up with it, and yet our government will.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Because people have told me as well that what you don't find out until you actually get to Dubai to move and to live there is that as a non-UAE citizen, you really don't have any rights at all.
Absolutely not. I think the UAE citizens, and there's very few of them because the country is made up of mostly expats. So they're given 100% privilege, and they're very money focused. The system is very money focused. And if the UAE government can freeze your assets, freeze your bank accounts, and freeze your real estate by keeping you in prison and someone else will benefit, then they'll indulge in that. And we have had, over the past 20 years that I've been running Detain in Dubai, we've seen more than 25,000 cases. So it's not isolated, and it's very much hidden. It's swept under the rug. People don't know what's going on, and just how consequential their decision to set up business in the UAE can be.
So what's the next stage? Are you waiting for a sort of a court's date? Have you filed papers? What's going on?
So we have obtained a ruling from the United Nations who have said that we should be compensated by the UAE for the arbitrary detention. We've been referred to the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Human Rights Abuses, and we expect a favourable ruling from them as well. At that point, we're going to have to deal with the FCDO again, because it is actually the obligation of the British government to then pursue diplomatically from the UAE that compensation. So it's been a long relationship, particularly with this case of Albert Douglas, even going back to Liz Truss when she was Prime Minister. So it does have some history there, and I hope that they'll come to the table and help try to seek that compensation, but also stop this happening again, because it's a repeat issue. It's, we had Matthew Hedges, we had the death of Lee Bradley Brown in custody, and I think even worse, Albert Douglas, a grandfather beaten up by multiple prison guards over a period of time, and to the point of broken bones. And it just seems strange that the UK would promote us visiting a country that is blatantly sort of committing these crimes against our citizens, not taking responsibility for them, and not compensating people, just thinking it's enough to say, okay, you can leave now. Well, Albert's been robbed. He's had years of his life taken from him. When he got home, his grandchildren had largely grown up. And, it's affected the family. It's just been an egregious hostility against a British citizen, and I think that it's time that the UK woke up to that and realised that it actually makes them look very weak diplomatically. That how can we negotiate the best trade deals? How can we negotiate the best security deals if we don't even have the basic respect that they're not going to torture our citizens? And I think the US has accomplished that respect, and I think that US citizens are very much safe at the moment, but the UK needs to do that, because so many British citizens visit Dubai. It is a much more popular destination for Brits than it is for Americans, so it is so important. I don't know, I doubt that that's going to be achievable during this administration, but I hope that it becomes a priority, and not just for the UAE but other countries as well, where these sorts of abuses are happening.
Sure. Rada, we wish you a lot of luck with it. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Rada Sterling there, who's from CEO of Due Process, detained in Dubai, doing a fine job there, trying to get some compensation for a grandfather who was held for 4 years in Dubai jail. Albert Douglas is his name. We'll look out for that story as time goes on. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be speaking to Sir Gerald Howarth. Sarah Poachin is going to be here from Reform as well. William Clouston will be along. And we'll also tell you what happens when we go looking for the heron yesterday, right? Or should I say the crane? Also, many of you have noticed that I am, as I promised to do, wearing a striped shirt today because there were enough likes on the show yesterday to have me do exactly what I said I would do, which is to wear a striped shirt for the first time ever doing this show. Because I normally only wear a plain white shirt, a plain pink shirt, or a plain blue shirt. Maybe I've started something. Maybe I'll start wearing more stripy shirts. Who can say? Right now, though, before we go to Edward Hughes with the news, let's have Plank of the Day.
Hello, it's Plank of the Day time.
Now, yesterday, I surprised everybody by not making my Plank of the Day anything to do with the Peter Mandelson story. Today, I can't do it for a second day in a row, I'm afraid. Yesterday, we gave it to the BMA, the British Medical Association, purely and simply because they are chock full of Marxists, and they're not doctors really at all, because they voted to have the permission of their own organisation to go back on strike before the summer, because they love striking. 53 days of strikes they've had over the last couple of years, and they've had also a bump in pay by about 30 to 35%. So, you know, practically 50% of the pay rise is what they're after, which is absolutely and utterly ridiculous. But the Plank of the Day today is one Emily Maitlis. You might remember her. She was famously the woman who interviewed Prince Andrew, as he was then in 2019, when he told a whole series of lies about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein and how it ended and how he hadn't seen him and how he flew all the way to New York to say in person that he wasn't going to be able to see him anymore. Was then photographed walking through Central Park with him. And of course, what we now know is that he had a great deal to do with him in times to follow. However, it's not about Andrew. It's about her relationship with Peter Mandelson. Because Emily Maitlis, of course, formerly of the BBC, formerly of Newsnight, now works on a podcast. That's her with Peter Mandelson. Look at the smile on her face. She's cozying up to him. She's sort of coquettishly playing with his bow tie, by the looks of it. She's part of that club we were talking about earlier on, the Westminster Club, which has got journalists in it, it's got politicians in it, and it's got members of lobbying groups, and it's got civil servants at high levels, and they're all playing the same game. And they're all looking after each other. If somebody gets fired, somebody else gives them a job. If somebody is involved in a scandal, they lie low for a bit, and then they suddenly, you know, find themselves working with each other again. Well, this is what she said just the other day about her good friend, Peter Mandelson.
There are worse elements to the Mandelson-Epstein relationship, and they go to the heart of Mandelson's role in Number 10 at Gordon Brown's side when he was his business secretary and de facto deputy prime minister, trying to influence government policy to help billionaires in the US save money on tax. I can't get my head around that. I can't get my head around that. It's as if, you know, Darren Jones now were trying to help parents get off paying VAT on private schools. And he'd be like, but sorry, but this is your government's policy. What are you doing? Yeah. Why was Mandelson seemingly on the side of the billionaire paedophile and not on the side of his own country when he was working in government?
Yeah, it's a good question. Why wasn't he on the side of his own country? Well, maybe what you should have done, Emily, was ask him that when you were cozying up to him at dinner. Instead of cozying up to him at dinner, instead of being his friend, instead of hanging out with him, maybe you could have asked him what he was doing, sending emails to a foreign financier with secret government documents in them, with secret government policy in them, with secret government fiscal plans in them. Perhaps you could have asked him that if you were a proper journalist. But because you're not a proper journalist and you'd rather cozy up to him and coquettishly stroke his bow tie and wear an off-the-shoulder number exposing your arms, I mean, that's the problem in this country. The reason that people like Mandelson have got away with this stuff for such a long time is because the journalists are doing that instead of asking questions. That's the problem. And it will always be the problem as long as you've got these useless, hopeless, terrible journalist with no judgment whatsoever. Emily Maitlis, Plank of the Day.
Hello, it's Plank of the Day time.
I mean, here's another bit that might interest you, because the journalism isn't any better in some parts of the world than it is here. Here's Donald Trump yesterday admonishing a CNN journalist. Check this out.
I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
But what would you say to people who feel like they haven't gotten justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say?
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face.
I'm asking you about survivors.
You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
Donald Trump, they're sticking it to CNN, and quite rightly, because CNN has become a most disgraceful organisation which peddles all sorts of mistruths and falsehoods and all the rest of it. And Donald Trump doesn't take any prisoners, he just tells them. And every time anyone from CNN gets up to ask a question, he gives them a going over. Quite rightly. Again, they've got every right to hold him to account, but what they haven't got every right to do is to base their news on ideology, which means that because they think something might have been true, they report it as though it is. And that, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem. Coming up, it's going to be Mike's Meltdown. I've got plenty to say about today's events and what will happen at Prime Minister's Questions and why, like Dan Hodges, I don't believe a word that comes out of Keir Starmer's mouth. First up, though, is Edward Hughes with the news.
Good morning, it's Wednesday the 4th of February. I'm Edward Hughes. Oh joy, another glorious Wednesday in Blighty. Peter Mandelson's Epstein fanfiction emails have finally torpedoed him, leaking Gordon Brown's resignation and Eurozone bailouts like it was casual WhatsApp banter. Police now probing the former business secretary for misconduct in public office. I wouldn't want to probe him. Shocked? No one is shocked. Prince Andrew gets yet another Epstein remix. Fresh claim a woman was trafficked to the UK for him. Palace probably updating the Pizza Express alibi PowerPoint as we speak. Lucy Letby doc drops on Netflix. Some doctors who helped convict her now admit a tiny doubt about the medical evidence. Brilliant timing. Justice system really nailed it first time. Probation service basically one missed email from total collapse. Public safety? Optional extra, apparently. Prison drone deliveries at 43% because nothing says rehabilitation like Amazon Prime for contraband. Junior doctors vote to keep the strike option simmering for another 6 months. NHS winter crisis, the gift that keeps on giving. And experts warn the UK could face a proper food crisis if war, cyber attacks or weather decide to gang up. Stock the beans, folks. Posh Waitrose ones are probably tariffed soon anyway. There. Britain 2026. Scandals we've seen before, services on life support, and the weather about to bury us in snow. As Talking Head said, same as it ever was. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Somebody suggested he's being very witty today. Yeah, he's obviously in a good mood. I don't know why. Maybe he's as excited as I am by the forthcoming Prime Minister's Questions and what's likely to come out today. Great piece, by the way, by Dan Hodges in the Mail. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about that in a moment because it's going to be time for my meltdown of the day, which I'm going to be doing. Also, I'll be telling you what the deal is with the heron. We went looking for it. I keep calling it a heron. Of course, we know it's not a heron. It's a crane, isn't it? I showed you the box yesterday. We'll bring you up to date on all of that stuff as well. And also Sir Gerald Howarth is going to be here, a former government defence minister. We'll get his view on the terrible state of this particular government. But coming up after this, I'm going to be giving you Mike's Meltdown. So the headlines speak for themselves this morning. Evidence that damns Labour's Dark Lord. Metropolitan Police launch a criminal probe into Mandelson as Kemi pressures the Prime Minister. That's the Daily Mail. Mandelson facing a full criminal investigation on the front page of the Times. Peer to exit Lords amid claims of leaks to Epstein. Gordon Brown condemns an unpatriotic act. For those of you who've been living under a rock, which Peter Mandelson says he doesn't want to do, by the way, for the last few days, should know that basically Lord Mandelson resigned his peerage yesterday. He quit the House of Lords. It was announced by the new Speaker of the House of Lords, Michael Forsyth, in a very straightforward manner. As of today, he will no longer be a member of the House of Lords. He will, however, unless he's stripped of the title, still be able to use the title Lord Mandelson, which, like anybody would know, if you know somebody like him, he will relish, and he will still book restaurants in the name of Lord Mandelson. He will still book airline flights as Lord Mandelson. He will still have Lord Mandelson on his passport if he so wishes. So we'll see whether Keir Starmer, as it turns out, is going to end up having an actual act of Parliament to strip him of his lordship. I think he should do it. But of course he won't, because what Keir Starmer doesn't want is a debate about Peter Mandelson and about what he knew and when he knew it. Because the trouble for Starmer is that on Monday he launched a full cabinet investigation into what the real relationship was between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson. But of course, he shouldn't have had to launch a full cabinet investigation, because there was already a cabinet investigation that had taken place some weeks earlier when Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, had asked the cabinet exactly what Peter Mandelson had done when he was Business Secretary back in 2008, 2009, when he was effectively Deputy Prime Minister of this country, when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. Gordon Brown had asked exactly what evidence they held inside of Number 10 about what Mandelson had been doing, what secrets he'd been revealing, who he'd been conversing with, who he'd been sending emails to. And do you know what the cabinet said? They said they couldn't find anything. They said they didn't know anything. They said there wasn't anything. And of course, it now turns out that there was plenty. Dan Hodges today in the Daily Mail points out that when this sort of scandal first came to fruition properly, it was just before the state visit to the UK by President Donald Trump. As he says, it involved the US ambassador to Washington while the US president was visiting the UK, but did neither Keir Starmer nor anyone else think to ask the Americans, what else have you got on this? It's a good question. He says it simply beggars belief. Starmer is a former director of public prosecutions. He's meant to be a top lawyer, isn't he? Right? So he's meant to be a bit curious about this stuff. What's more, in that position, he had a major role liaising directly with the US intelligence services in the fight against terror. Dan Hodges continues, yet we are meant to believe his lack of curiosity meant that he didn't even bother asking what information the Americans held about his most senior diplomat befriending a notorious paedophile and placing himself directly at the heart of what many now suspect was a Russian honey trap operation. So we've got the Russians involved, we've got the CIA probably involved, the NSA, MI6, MI5, Downing Street, the police, you know, everyone's involved, but nobody's asking a question about Peter Mandelson, what he's doing. There are only three credible answers, according to Dan Hodges. One, Starmer did ask and the US authorities fobbed him off or lied to him, which would represent another damning blow to his international credibility. Two, he didn't bother to ask, in which case he's simply not fit to hold prime ministerial office, which I think is more likely. Or he did ask, he learned the truth, but again, he then decided to hide that truth from the Parliament and its people. Whatever you may think about Keir Starmer, and I know what most of you think, you agree with me that he is a complete waste of space and a dud. He's finished. He's toast. I predicted it almost 18 months ago. I said he wouldn't last the pace. I said he would never get all the way to 2029 for another election. I said there might not even be anybody getting to 2029 for an election. This is a crisis of mammoth proportions, ladies and gentlemen. Have no fear. This is not messing around. This could not only take down the government, it could take down the whole parliamentary system in this country. Because if it turns out that all of this was covered up, if it turns out that lots of people knew and they didn't say anything, they're all out of a job. The whole civil service will be held to account. The whole of this government will be out of a job. And maybe then we can start rebuilding this country into what it really should be. A place to be proud of, a place to enjoy living in, and a place for us to enjoy our own country. That's what we need, and we need it now. I'm Mike Graham, and that is my monologue for the day.
Don't you forget now to like and subscribe and all the socials out there, especially there's a YouTube channel, flannel.
Welcome back to the Mike Graham Show. We've got so much to do. Coming up, Sarah Poachin from Reform is going to join us. We'll hear her take on events in Parliament this week. It's been an absolutely incredible week, and I feel as though we ought to play even more of some of the things that have been said. Let's remember, shall we, what people said about Peter Mandelson when he was made ambassador to the United States of America, the most senior diplomatic post that the British government can appoint somebody to. This is Darren Jones, who is now basically Keir Starmer's right-hand man in Downing Street. This is what he had to say.
Confident that the Trump administration will accept Keir Starmer's pick of ambassador, Peter Mandelson, to work with him.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the first time...
Just to get that on the record, you're confident that Peter Mandelson is going to be accepted as ambassador?
Yeah, because look, for the first time in, I think, maybe 50 years, this is the first time that a British Prime Minister has picked a politician to be the ambassador in DC. We have brilliant diplomats, and Karen Pierce has done a brilliant job. But the reason the Prime Minister picked Peter Mandelson was because we want to do things differently. We recognise the important relationship between our two countries. There are lots of opportunities there on trade and the way in which our countries collaborate, whether it's on technology or on finance or on defence and security issues. And I think Peter Mandelson will be a brilliant ambassador for us and will form a very strong partnership with the new administration.
But what do you mean?
Yeah. He's going to be a brilliant ambassador. We want to do things differently. Well, nobody at the time knew that when they said we want to do things differently, what they meant was what we want to do is make sure that we have a lot of back channels to a lot of really, really dodgy people that we can still sell information to, or we can give information to that might enable them to get richer. Because that was certainly what Peter Mandelson was doing, it would appear, when he was business secretary under Gordon Brown in 2009. Angela says, well said, Mike. This is why I watch and listen as well. Well, lots of you saying some very nice things. Thank you very much indeed. Prime Minister's questions coming up today. Let's talk now to Sir Gerald Howarth, former Tory minister, to get his take on what has been going on in what can only be described, Sir Gerald, as a most incredible sort of few days, really, in politics, isn't it?
Absolutely amazing. It's very difficult, Mike, to recall a time when British politics was in such turmoil. And it's understandable. The wrath in the Labour Party is tangible. They are absolutely seething because, of course, to a certain extent, like the Conservative Party, the Labour Party is a coalition between the Blairites and the Corbynistas. And of course, Peter Mandelson was architect of the great New Labour movement, and the left of the Labour Party pretty well despise him for that. Yeah. So there will be no love lost for the Prime Minister having appointed this man, whom they pretty well detest, having appointed him as ambassador to the United States, and now to find this humiliating experience cast all over the newspapers and in front of all their constituents.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, you were Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Ministry of Defence as Minister for International Security Strategy back in 2010. Shortly after, I suppose you might say, Gordon Brown left government. Is it credible, would you say, for Peter Mandelson to have been able to communicate so freely with people outside of government, with government information, security sensitive information, financially sensitive information? Is it credible that he could have done that? Gerald was the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Ministry of Defence as Minister for International Security Strategy from May 2010 to September 2012, which is why I'm really interested in his answer, which we will get, by the way. Don't forget, we are here for your delectation. So we will get that answer, because I don't really believe that it is credible that Peter Mandelson could have done what he did, or what he is alleged to have done, and which he has not in fact denied, although he says he doesn't remember sending those emails. He says he doesn't remember getting a lot of money transferred into his account. We've seen the evidence of it. We've seen copies of emails. We've seen copies of bank statements. It remains to be seen whether the police will charge Peter Mandelson with any of this particular malfeasance in public office. But the bottom line is, for me, I don't believe that the security services in this country are so bad that they don't know what is going on inside of number 10 Downing Street, and that they don't know what's going on with ministers, that they don't know who ministers are talking to, that they don't know who ministers are communicating with. Because if that is the case, then we are in a whole world of trouble, aren't we? Because what that means is that the security of this country is technically under threat. at all times. I mean, we keep hearing about Russian spies. We keep hearing about Russian honey traps. We keep hearing, for example, about the Chinese embassy being built and Chinese spies and Chinese infiltration into various levels of government. And if the security services are incapable of knowing what individual MPs, what individual ministers are doing, then that leaves us wide open, does it not, to all sorts of bad stuff. I think we've got Sir Gerald back, have we? Yes, we have. Sorry.
Yes,
you were just
sorry,
in-
Mike. I don't know what
you-
happened
you-
there. This
you were
is
just
a
in
new
full
system
flow.
with which I'm familiar.
Yes, don't worry. Listen, we've got a new show here. This is only week 5, and so occasional teething problems will occur. But I was interested in your answer to that question. Is it credible that the security services did not know that Peter Mandelson was communicating with people outside of the government with sensitive information?
I have no idea, Mike. I don't know what policing the security services do on our individual mobile phones. I certainly had 1 or 2 dealings with the security services. I had a couple of guys come and see me. I didn't know their names at the time, and I don't know their names today, and that's entirely right and proper. But at the end of the day, the British people are entitled to repose some trust in those whom they elect to high office. That is why it is very important that we do not deter people of ability from taking part in public life. Too many of my friends, even when I first entered Parliament in 1983, having been in the city working for Standard Chartered Bank, and I said to my friends, why don't you come and join me? They said, you must be joking, Gerald. We're not prepared to put us and our families before the interminable scrutiny, intrusion of the media, and so on. And so, as I said to Paul Dacre, the former editor of the Daily Mail, not so long ago, I said, look, Paul, you've got to hold back on the relentless criticism of people in public life. If you look back at the past, those the upper echelons of society committed the most atrocious crimes in by today's standards, and people expect their elected members of parliament to be both saints, but like them as well. Well, I used to tell my constituents, no good voting for a saint, because a saint won't be able to represent you because you're not a saint.
No, but there's a difference between not being a saint and being a traitor to your country, I think. And if you are employed as a minister of the crown, I think the least we can expect is, you may not have to keep your trousers on at all times, but what you ought to do is not be sending sensitive and very, very sort of highly regarded information, which could make somebody an awful lot of money, to a foreign entity or a foreign individual.
Now, this is absolutely right, Mike, and this is at the heart of this whole scandal as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. I mean, let us not forget that this scandal is not just about the United Kingdom. I mean, it goes to the heart of the American, the establishment, American royalty. The Clintons, Zuckerbergs, and even the Trumps and the Gateses and so on. But as far as we are concerned, what is really material, absolutely right, what is different about this is it would appear, and he is by definition innocent unless the police and the courts find otherwise, that he was actually passing market-sensitive information, not to a paedophile, but to a financier. That is very, very serious.
Yeah, absolutely right. And also, the question, of course, that I was asking yesterday is what else did he pass him? I found myself asking a question about the gold sell-off, when Gordon Brown famously sold off all of our gold. I mean, are there communications which would suggest that that was maybe Jeffrey Epstein's idea because he fancied shorting gold? I mean, anything's possible under these circumstances.
Well, everything is indeed possible, and I think it's absolutely right that this investigation is taking place. And who knows what other information is to be revealed? After all, there's something like 3 million files, it appears, and the whole journalistic community has been trawling through this 24/7 to try and find out what's going on. It may well be that more is unearthed, but it is so unedifying seeing a leading figure in our country parading in his underpants. I mean, it's just utterly
Right.
humiliating. And then so thick with this chap that he makes such disparaging remarks about his own Prime Minister, Gordon Brown,
Yes.
to whom he was effectively the right-hand man. I mean, it is so deeply unedifying and humiliating. And that is, of course, why not only the whole political establishment is shocked, but the Labour Party, quite rightly, is seething with anger. And of course, many of them felt a distaste for Mandelson in the first place. And to find that their Prime Minister not only brought him back in from the cold for the third time, having been eviscerated from government twice before, but having brought him back, has now plunged them into this appalling scandal.
Yeah. Well, surely they've only got themselves to blame. I mean, they could be as seething as they like, but as you say, they brought him back when they didn't need to. And again, questions will have to be asked, and hopefully they'll be asked by Kemi Badenoch today. Exactly what went through Keir Starmer's mind, and who advised him, and what advice was he given, and how is it possible that with all of this stuff that we now know, some of which was known already when they appointed him, how was it possible that he became the ambassador, the most important, as I said, diplomatic job in the British government? Knowing what, even if you didn't know all this stuff, all the other stuff that he had to resign over before, dodgy dealings with Indian businessmen and passports, dodgy dealings over the purchase of a house and a loan that he got from Jeffrey Robinson, one of his colleagues. This guy has got sleaze literally written on his forehead.
Well, he certainly has experience as far as the mortgage was concerned, and the loan from Jeffrey Robinson, a fellow member of Parliament at the time. And the point there was that he failed to declare it.
Right.
In other words, there was no transparency. And it would appear that is something that applies here, that there was no transparency either to his colleagues, or it would appear to the civil servants either, of his dealings with a foreign financier. This is the thing I think is so important, Mike, that we're talking about, is that Epstein was a financier. Ergo, he was interested in market developments as part of his living, and as a way of ensuring that he was able to amass a fortune. And it would appear, of course, it is for the police and other investigating authorities to determine the truth of this. But on the face of it, it would appear that he was in receipt of market-sensitive information which could have been used to his financial advantage, even if it was not to the immediate benefit of Lord Mandelson.
Well, exactly right. And this morning, obviously, we're all looking forward to Prime Minister's questions. We're all hoping that Kemi Badenoch hands Keir Starmer his backside when she asks him a bunch of questions today. But, I've got an awful lot of interest on our message board today on the YouTube. And this is from Dean, who says, Mike, I lost my business in 2009 after the financial crash. Meanwhile, Mandelson and God knows who else in government were busy leaking information, making cronies multimillionaires from my misery. And that's a very good point. People suffered during that financial crash. It would appear that Peter Mandelson basically profited from it, at the very least, to the tune of however many $75,000 that was apparently deposited in his bank account.
Absolutely. I mean, it was an appalling time. And if you remember, Gordon Brown, as Chancellor, when he became Chancellor of the Exchequer, said he'd ended boom and bust.
Yeah.
And then we went through the most spectacular bust, and that was in large measure engineered by him, or for which he was, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, responsible. And he left the incoming Conservative Lib Dem coalition government. He left us with a £160 billion deficit. That is to say, we had overspent in that year, or they had overspent in that year, £160 billion more than they had received in revenue from tax and elsewhere. So he destroyed the economy. He sold off the gold at rock bottom price. And I think it would be interesting for the public to know to what extent Peter Mandelson was a useful idiot in this financial disaster, which, as Dean says, affected him catastrophically and so many other people across the country, including my own constituents in Aldershot.
Indeed. I'll finish up with a bit of slight levity for you. This is from Rob. He says, my missus tells me I was in the pub on Saturday night buying pints. I have no recollection of it. I don't think she believes me, but I'm going to stick with the Mandelson defence, as it's now becoming known.
Well, I very much hope that he was not in the pub wearing his underpants, because I think that would have been even more humiliating than having had too much and not being able to remember the night before.
Yes.
That is, of course, an experience which I suspect many of us listening to this programme with you today, Mike, including, I dare say, yourself, have been through ourselves. Ergo, I think that we want to have some sympathy with him as well as sympathy with his wife.
Well, let's see. I'll tell you what I've never been pictured doing is having a foot massage on the front page of the Times and the Telegraph, and that's another Mandelson manoeuvre today. Great to see you, Gerald Howard. Thank you very much indeed. Somebody there saying that they delivered a shed to you previously. Can we just see that again? Sorry, I just wanted to read that out. A viewer who's just sent in a little message to us saying that they delivered a shed to you and you were a very friendly and nice person. Here we go. Silver Era. I delivered to Gerald's garden shed a few months back. He was a very friendly person. Thumbs up.
Oh, very kind of him indeed. If you could tell him, if he's listening, that the shed is still, it's actually a summer house.
Very nice.
And it is still in its kit form, awaiting the arrival of the sunshine. God knows when that's going to happen. Awaiting the arrival of the sunshine so that I may erect it. But you can tell him that I have laid the foundations. I have a concrete base for it, and I should be putting it together as soon as the sun comes out.
Excellent stuff. So Gerald Howard, thank you very much indeed. Only on this show, the Mike Graham Show, will you hear those kind of tales, erections, and of course, concrete. The main word of the day. Coming up, Sarah Poachin's going to join us from Reform, the Runcorn MP, of course. She's got plenty to say about what she's up to in Runcorn. She's got plenty to say about the police locally in Cheshire as well. And also, we'll be asking her about Prime Minister's questions and the state of this nation right now with Peter Mandelson in disgrace. But before we do all of that, I think it's time for a Heron update. Should we do Heron of the Day first, or should we do a Heron update, Pooch? What do you think?
Let's do a Heron update.
So Heron update. So the story so far, right? We had to get rid of the heron, right? We did a little poll. Crane. Yeah, my apologies. The heron was sent to us by Donald MacLeod, right? In a box. The box was not checked for contents before the heron was erected, since we're talking about erecting herons. And here is the box. We discovered, however, that on the box was the word crane, because that's what it was, right? And so it turns out that we had to do a little poll. We had a like competition. So we said, look, if you get to 5,000 likes, we'll keep the crane, heron. And if we get to 6,000 likes, we'll get rid of it. So we got to 6,000 likes. In fact, I think in the end we got to about 7,000 likes, and we got rid of it. And we put it in the bin. And we showed you me putting it in the recycling bin. Anyway, so yesterday, a lot of people complained, including Donald MacLeod. He wasn't very happy about it. He said, look, I bought you guys a gift. What are you doing putting it in the bin? A lot of people said it was cruel. What are you thinking? Give it to somebody. Put it in a charity shop, sell it on for charity, or, make some money, something like that. So yesterday, enough of you voted and liked the show. I think you got to 5,000. So we said, all right, we're going to go and see if we can find the crane. Stroke heron. And here's what happened. I'm going to close this and get this. This is where the bin is, right? I think she said it was in one of these bins. You know what's going to be the nightmare is if that's Sarah laughing in the background. One of these recycling bins. Let's see, right. Cracking in. Scientific laboratory supplies. Bactobio.
She definitely said the crane was in here, though, didn't she?
She did. It's not. These first two. Oh, look, there's food waste as well. Cracking. Oh, cracking! Look, there it is. Look, we found it. We found the crane.
Brilliant.
Amazing. So, you get to reprieve. You get to come back into the studio Maybe tomorrow we'll figure out where in the studio, because we don't know.
Okay.
Whether he goes back to the original crane position, or whether I don't know. Maybe we'll take another vote on it tomorrow.
Yeah, take a vote on it.
We'll do some more likey votes.
And name, what do you like, Michael Crane or John Crane?
I like Michael Crane.
Michael Crane.
Yeah.
Or Donald MacLeod?
Donald McCrae.
Donald McCrae.
I mean, Donald, you can rest easy now. You can stop taking the tablets. We found him. We've rescued him. He'll be back tomorrow. I mean, what can you say? All human life is here, and animal life. So the crane makes a return today. We haven't actually replaced him fully, but we will. I think Pooch will replace him in his rightful place. But enough of that nonsense, because it's time to talk Turkey, as it were. Time to talk serious politics with Sarah Pochin from Reform, who is with me now. Sarah, very good morning to you.
That's so hard to now talk serious politics. Honestly, the sight of you going to those bins. But I'd actually like to put a claim in for the crane, because I have a pond at home and the herons eat all my fish.
Oh dear.
So listen, the perfect place for that crane is to come home with me to Cheshire and we'll put it on my pond and I'll send you a little video.
That'd be great, actually. Maybe that's what we should do, because we can't really decide what to do. And you know, there are no fish to be saved here in the studio. So I think that's a very good idea. Very good idea indeed. Now, I mean, if I had come to you this morning and told you the story of what's been happening in the Labour government for the past sort of 48 hours, you probably wouldn't believe me. You know, I've been in this business a long time. I've never seen a scandal like this. People have started to say it's as bad as Profumo, goes all the way back to that. I was a bit young when that happened, but it's certainly the biggest political scandal, because we don't even know where it ends yet, do we?
Well, yet again, we're seeing Keir Starmer's judgment being brought into question. You know, his judgment of the people he surrounds himself with has already been in question with the various ministers that have had to resign. You know, you had the corruption minister resigning for corruption and so on and so forth. But this appointment of Mandelson as our representative in the United States, one of the most sought after and senior and high profile positions that this country, this government gives to somebody, it's an honour. And yet Peter Mandelson gets given that. And thank God he's now been stripped of it. But what it does tell us is that the judgment of this Prime Minister yet again is called into question. Now, that is one thing, but let alone what's happened in Peter Mandelson's murky past. And do you know what, Mike? I actually think that Peter Mandelson is looking potentially at a jail sentence, because this is market manipulation. He shared government information, incredibly sensitive information with his friends. And I think you're looking at market manipulation and criminal charges.
You've got a background as a magistrate. You know the law. You know, this is clearly, and he hasn't denied it. You know, he's kind of slightly mealy-mouthed said, "I don't recall whether I sent that email. I don't have any recollection of the money going into my account," which sort of sounds a bit like a non-denial denial, doesn't it? But it gets worse. You know, we learned last night that he was having a conversation with Epstein about persuading Alistair Campbell and Gordon Brown to do a deal with the Lib Dems to stay in power, because Epstein didn't fancy being in opposition. You know, almost as though Epstein was a sort of de facto member of the cabinet.
What you're seeing here, what the British public can't stand, is a group, and yet again, of men or people in powerful positions, prepared to act fraudulently, to act with corruption, without integrity. They're powerful, they're wealthy, they want to control the political establishment, let alone the abuse of young women that has clearly gone on. In every way, this is sordid, this is distasteful, and it's exactly what the British public hate about the establishment.
It really is. And I mean, I think if Starmer's reputation was at an all-time low before all of this came out, it now is, you know, even further down below that, because it's his judgment is now in question. Dan Hodges has written a great piece in the Mail today, which I recommend you read. I don't know if you have, where he says, look, there are only three possible choices here. One, Starmer didn't bother asking anybody from the United States about the problems with Peter Mandelson and his connections with Epstein. Two, he was told about it and he basically didn't do anything and decided not to reveal that to anybody else. And three, he just basically kind of sat there and did a favour for a mate. In any of those three circumstances, surely Starmer has to go as well.
Exactly. Look, anyone who reaches the highest level of government, like Keir Starmer now has, needs to behave with the highest amount of integrity. We need to be squeaky clean as politicians. And he clearly is involved in something very, very unsavoury. Now, you're not telling me that Keir Starmer did not know about some of Peter Mandelson's skeletons, because Peter Mandelson has been at the heart of the Labour Party for his entire adult life. And so I do not buy for a second that Keir Starmer didn't know anything about any of this. But more importantly, surely Peter Mandelson was vetted thoroughly. Surely the Prime Minister was told by our security services that he was not an appropriate choice to be the United Kingdom's representative in the United States. I'm not buying any of that. This is murky. It's absolutely stinks. And you know what? I think Keir Starmer could well end up going over this.
I think so, because there have been so many other things he should have gone over, and this would appear to be the final straw. The other question I was asking, I asked Gerald Howarth, who used to be the Minister for Security in the government of 2010. Basically, how is it possible that a senior member of the cabinet, as business secretary and effectively Deputy Prime Minister to Gordon Brown, can send information, sensitive information, financially very sensitive information, to an outsider from a different country who happens to be a financier as well as happening to be a paedophile? But how is it possible for him as a minister to send very, very sensitive information outside of Downing Street without anybody knowing about it?
Well, the scary thing, isn't it? We talk about, endlessly. I talk about the Chinese sabotaging, spying on us, being in the heart of our government. And yet here, you actually have complicit in this sort of, passing of highly sensitive information. You have our own government ministers. This is absolutely shocking. And how can the British people have confidence now in this Prime Minister? I don't think they had any left, or it was minimal. Even the hardcore Labour voters are now turning to reform. But the point is that nobody can have confidence in this Prime Minister anymore. I really do think he will end up going over this. I think Mandelson will end up in jail over this. And then, of course, we have the whole sordid connection with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. As I say, it's distasteful. And I think you're right. It may prove to be a scandal as big as the Profumo scandal, which we all still know and talk about. And it became almost an infamous time in history, didn't it? But this is got a long way to go, I think, and I would imagine there are a lot of people feeling very uncomfortable about what photographs and what messages are out there that their names are on.
Yeah, exactly right. Prime Minister's questions, of course, today. I don't know if you're going to be in the chamber, because it looks like you're. Hopefully you are. I don't know if Reform have got a question, but Kemi Badenoch supposedly is going to be pressing hard for a vote on stripping Mandelson of his title, because at the moment he can still call himself Lord Mandelson, even though he's resigned from the Lords. But I also worry slightly that Starmer's going to get up at Prime Minister's questions and basically try and get away with saying, oh, well, because there's now a police investigation going on, I can't possibly comment on any questions that you might wish to ask me. Do you think he might do that?
Yeah, well, look, he doesn't answer any questions as it is. In fact, no Labour front bench. I ask endless questions in the chamber and never get a straight answer. Get laughed at, get ignored, get heckled. It's not what the British public expect or should expect from their politicians. So Starmer, no, of course he won't be asking any questions. He'll be deflecting it and trying to push it all away from him. But the fact is, I do hope that Kemi goes hard on him today, and Reform would also like to see him stripped, Mandelson, to see him stripped of any title and never be allowed to come back to a high profile position in public office. He's already proved to be a man with several lives, you know, Mandelson, over the years. But no, this has to be it. He has to go. And like I say, I think he'll find himself on holiday at Her Majesty's pleasure, or should I now say His Majesty's pleasure.
Yes, indeed. And it looks like he may lose his pension from the European Union. I'm not quite sure of the reasoning behind that, but that's what I read this morning. Surely that should, he'll also be in receipt, presumably, of a pension from the House of Commons and presumably from his time in government. Should he have that docked, do you think, as well? If he's found guilty?
All of his privileges should go if he's found guilty.
Yeah.
I absolutely think the public have had enough of people, corrupt people in positions of power, lining their own pockets at the taxpayers' expense.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk a bit about what happened yesterday. Nigel Farage in a pub, unusually for him. This time launching some policy, though, not just having a drink, saying that they're going to cut, you, if you get in, are going to cut VAT down to 10%, and you're going to make it a lot easier for pub owners to actually make a living, which at the moment they're finding very hard, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. Look, reform, if we get into power, we value the pub. We value it as part of British history, part of our culture, and importantly, a place where, you know, people go and debate things like politics, without not being allowed to talk about that. You know, we welcome free speech, and the pub it should be the heart of free speech. So reform will decrease business rates for pubs. We will decrease VAT for pubs. We will decrease beer duty for pubs. We need to support pubs. We need to support the hospitality sector as a whole. You know, this hospitality sector has already, under this Labour government, lost, last time I looked about a month ago, 118,000 jobs. It's reported that, there's pubs shutting every day under this Labour government. This is our heritage, it's our culture, and this government needs to support it.
Absolutely, and I enjoyed the sort of the faux beers that were put up at the pub launch, including Job Goblin with a picture of Rachel Thieves, as we like to call it, Landlord Hell. We've got Starmer's Atwit. We've got Doomed Bar, which was all very good. Because I was watching, or rather reading a piece the other day in which it said that as alcohol tax has gone up this week, the average cost of a pint is now reaching sort of £7.50 in a lot of places, of which landlords only get about 47 pence.
It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? The tax now on things like this, and it's prohibitive, and it's no wonder that pubs are struggling. And of course, under the Labour government, who clearly have no comprehension of what it's like to run a business, as we know, none of them on the front bench have ever run their own business. But they put on national insurance increases. They put the minimum wage up. They're introducing the workers' rights bill. Everything that stops small businesses employing people, everything that stops growth. And without growth in this country, we cannot prosper. I have up in my constituency of Runcorn and Helsby on Friday morning my first business breakfast for a group of businessmen locally, and I guarantee you I will be hearing this story time and time again about high street business rates, about all the things I've just mentioned, how hard it is now to employ people. This Labour government is doing everything it can to destroy the economy and destroy growth in this country.
Yeah, exactly right. I think we've got a little clip actually from your colleague Dr. David Bull on the pub situation. Have a look.
Today, Reform UK launched our campaign to save Britain's pubs. This is to back British boozers. We believe that over the course of the next Parliament, we can save you £1 off your pint, and we do that by actually cutting VAT, making sure that we reverse the employer's national insurance back down to 13.8%. We will cut the beer duty to 10%. And over time, we will also reduce the burden to hospitality industries. It's the right thing to do. It's the way forward to save our local communities, our rural communities, and to bring people and families back together.
Dr. David Bull, what a fine man. Lovely little microphone. And now I saw the bus in the background there. Here's a question for you. How many parking tickets has the bus accrued since you've been travelling around the country?
Well, actually, I was pictured in the driving seat of that bus up in Gorton and Denton last
Yeah.
week. It's absolutely fabulous. It actually belongs to Richard Tice. You know, he's got a reform bus and a reform taxi.
Yes.
So there you go, there you go. But yeah, I mean, David Bull is absolutely right. You know, I wasn't actually allowed to go to the pub launch. I had to go and do the sensible thing of debating the two-child benefit cap in the chamber.
Right.
So I was sent out to do the hardcore in the chamber and take the barrage of abuse from the opposition benches, whilst yes, Nigel and Lee and David were all in the pub. But there
Very
you
nice.
go.
Very nice too. Well, it's good to see them promoting the feminine side of the party, though. And obviously now you've got Sola Braverman on board as well to even things up slightly. Let me ask you about the by-election, by the way. What are you hearing up there on the doorstep when you walk around?
Yeah, look, I've been up 3 times and I'm going up again tomorrow. It's absolutely ours to win. You know, Labour have collapsed. They made such a hash of the whole Andy Burnham fiasco that Labour voters, I think, are just in despair. And interestingly, it's not unlike Runcorn and Helsby, my by-election, which was the last by-election we've had, in that it's a safe Labour seat, or always has been, Gorton and Denton. And yet now, as I say, Labour's collapsed. They're in disarray up there. They put up I'm sure she's a very nice candidate, but Greek. You know, and then we have the Tories in complete collapse. Two up there, they just irrelevant. They were in Runcorn and Helsby too. So in Runcorn and Helsby, it was a two-horse race between Reform and Labour. In Gorton and Denton, interestingly, I think now it is a two-horse race between Reform and probably the Green Party.
Yes.
The Lib Dems are irrelevant everywhere apart from what, Cornwall? I don't know.
Right.
You know, but really now with Galloway pulling out, with Corbyn pulling out, and getting behind the Green Party, unusually, I mean, how interesting in British politics that the two main parties historically literally are, I don't believe, are featuring in this by-election.
Right. It is fascinating, isn't it? And of course, the fake plumber is the Green candidate, isn't she? People keep making out that all these claims that she makes about going up ladders and fixing gutters and you know, having plaster as what's that word again, Pooch? What do you call it? A hawk, holding a hawk in her hand with too much plaster on it, and everyone's going, she clearly has never done this in her life, you know. But what about Advance as well? Because Nick Buckley is standing for Advance. Is there a worry that might sort of weaken or water down the Reform vote?
I don't think so. Look, you know, people know what Reform stand for, and they know that, you know, if they want to have core British values and prioritising the British people, then they need to get behind Nigel, because the fact is Nigel is going to be, you know, most likely going to be the next Prime Minister of our great country, and therefore I think, you know, it's going to be a vote for Reform every step of the way, because people want to get behind a winner, don't they? Nigel is a winner, and I think Reform stand a very good chance of winning this by-election. And oh my goodness, I'll tell you what, if Keir Starmer hasn't gone by then, he will, I'm sure, have to go if they lose this by-election.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't see any way that that's going to end up with Labour winning at all. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was I saw you in the chamber talking about the police, the Cheshire Police in particular,
Yes.
Who you've been working with recently on a lot of domestic violence arrests. Tell us a bit about that.
Do you know what? The Cheshire Police are incredible. They're led by an exceptional Chief Constable in Mark Roberts. And on Monday, I was privileged enough, and I use that word on purpose because it made me feel so proud that I have in Cheshire Police, or we have up in Cheshire, a force that is only interested in catching criminals. I didn't see a rainbow shoelace in sight or a rainbow lanyard, none of that nonsense. I saw hardcore policing, policemen and policewomen. I witnessed the brief they had that morning, and what they were doing a Cheshire-wide raid on known perpetrators of things like violence against women and girls, domestic violence, that were out there evading evading the police, evading the courts, and they were going after them big time. And the last night, by about 3 o'clock, I know they brought in 43 wanted perpetrators, wanted criminals. They were ready to process them. They got the space to process them. The operation was slick, efficient, and very, very impressive. And I was so proud to have Cheshire Police as my police force because that's what they want to do. Police want to get back to basics. They want to get out on the streets and catch criminals. They don't want to spend hours in woke training courses learning about pronouns and all this nonsense. You know, they want to be out there catching criminals. And what I saw on Monday morning was a police force that is all about presence, about making people feel safe, and about catching criminals. And
Right.
it was just an absolute honour to be there.
I wish they'd come to London and teach the Metropolitan
Yes,
Police how to do that,
quite.
because that would be great. Couple of things finally. We've got a poll running today. We do a poll every day. This one, well, I'm afraid it stopped, I'm afraid, when we had a crash on the system. But the question today was, who is the world's greatest genius? So I'm going to ask you if you can give us your vote. Is it Albert Einstein? Is it Isaac Newton? Is it Stephen Hawking? Or is it David Mastermind Lammy?
Do you know what? David Lammy actually dared to. I think he insulted Lee Anderson in
He
the
did,
chamber
didn't he?
last
Yeah.
week
Right.
over
His
sort of
IQ or
like
something, right?
his IQ. Yeah. Well, of course, we fell about, and Lee is very, very quick in the chamber with his jokes. He has me in stitches all the time,
Yeah.
and obviously pushed back on the mastermind front to Lammy. But yeah, what an absolute embarrassment that man is. But do you know what? I always feel so humbled by the people that push the boundaries. You know, whether it's Mozart or Elon Musk, you know, whether you like him or hate him, these are people that we need in our world. You know, they're global sort of influencers that push technology, that do creatively wonderful, genius things, and it always makes me feel very humble when we talk about these people. But whether it's, like I say, whether it's the very old philosophers or whether it's people like Elon Musk now, you know, I'm sorry, but you know, like him or loathe him, you've got to admire them
Sure.
because they are what make progress. You know, us politicians can do what we do, and you do what you do, Mike, and you know, we all do our best. But without geniuses, real geniuses,
Yeah.
then we don't make progress.
Entrepreneurs, and that's why we should encourage them to stay in the country as opposed to leaving, because of the ridiculous taxes that this
Absolutely.
government puts on them. I mean, I was listening the other day to a story about Elon Musk where he's apparently thinking of putting data centres, you know, these huge data centres which are going to suck all the power out of the earth and put them in space. And I mean, he'll probably do it because, I mean, he just wakes up in the morning and goes, I know, I'll invent a rocket and I'll send it up to space and then it can land on the moon and then we've got a data centre there which will be run completely by robots. And you kind of go, okay, all right then.
Talking about space, have you heard this story this morning about what they're trying to do in space?
No.
It's a bit naughty.
Is it?
They're trying to work out a way that people, I don't know if I should say this live on air, but I was listening to it this morning on the radio. They're trying to work out a way that astronauts can have a bit of nookie.
Sex.
Am I allowed to say that?
You can say
in
sex.
space.
Well, they'd have to take the spacesuit off first, wouldn't they? Presumably.
I'm not getting into the detail, but apparently they've designed some kind of belt that you can put around each other so that you don't float away from each other.
Fair enough. I'm sure there'll be a lot of women asking for one of those just to have on Earth, never mind in space. You know, so you can't stray too far away. Finally, I've got a lot of people saying they don't want us to take the crane out of the studio, but I'll tell you what, we'll make you an offer that you can't refuse. If Reform win the by-election, we'll send you a crane to put on the pond. What about that? So there you go. So yet another incentive, Sarah, to win the by-election up in Gorton. Great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We'll be fascinated to watch Prime Minister's questions today. I think it'll probably have the highest audience of all time to watch Starmer squirming. It'll be absolutely brilliant. Fantastic to see you. Great to see you. Hopefully next time in the studio we'll see you as well. Sarah Pochin, MP for Runcorn for Reform. Brilliant stuff. I mean, only on this show would you get conversations about sex in space, whether or not David Lammy's a genius. By the way, he won the poll. 48% of you say that David Mastermind Lammy is the genius. Coming second, Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton third, Stephen Hawking low down there on 7%. Absolutely terrible. Now it's coming up to, do you know what, Pooch? I haven't even given a time check all day today. 3 minutes past 9 is the time. It's time for some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, it's Wednesday the 4th of February. I'm Edward Hughes. Oh joy. Another glorious Wednesday in Blighty. Peter Mandelson's Epstein fanfiction emails have finally torpedoed him, leaking Gordon Brown's resignation and Eurozone bailouts like it was casual WhatsApp banter. Police now probing the former business secretary for misconduct in public office. I wouldn't want to probe him. Shocked? No one is shocked. Prince Andrew gets yet another Epstein remix. Fresh claim a woman was trafficked to the UK for him. Palace probably updating the Pizza Express alibi PowerPoint as we speak. Lucy Letby doc drops on Netflix. Some doctors who helped convict her now admit a tiny doubt about the medical evidence. Brilliant timing. Justice system. Really nailed it first time. Probation service basically one missed email from total collapse. Public safety? Optional extra, apparently. Prison drone deliveries at 43% because nothing says rehabilitation like Amazon Prime for contraband. Junior doctors vote to keep the strike option simmering for another 6 months. NHS winter crisis, the gift that keeps on giving. And experts warn the UK could face a proper food crisis if war, cyber attacks or weather decide to gang up. Stock the beans, folks. Posh Waitrose ones are probably tariffed soon anyway. There. Britain 2026. Scandals we've seen before, services on life support, and the weather about to bury us in snow. As Talking Head said, same as it ever was. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
Same as it ever was, as they say. I'm going to run through some of the front pages that we have for you, because if you're just joining us, I know loads of you have been watching all the way through the show, so thank you very much indeed for that. We've got The Guardian, Met investigation into Mandelson over alleged Epstein email leaks, and then they're using that famous picture once again of Mandelson in what looks like a sort of a very sunny kitchen. With a very relaxed-looking Jeffrey Epstein next to him. Evidence that damns Labour's Dark Lord is what it says on the front of the Daily Mail, as well as this piece from Sarah Vine. What motivated Sarah Ferguson to take her young daughters to visit a convicted paedophile? Absolutely. And then Edward's call to remember victims of evil Epstein. Prince Edward was asked about it yesterday, and he gave his view on what his brother should do. Brown accuses Number 10 of a cover-up, says the Daily Telegraph, with a picture accompanying it of Peter Mandelson getting a foot massage from an unknown man. And this time, thankfully, he's not in his underpants. He is actually fully clothed. He's got his trousers on, which is thankful for the rest of us. The same picture on the front of the Times, Mandelson facing full criminal investigation. Inexcusable is the headline on the Mirror, in which they say a criminal probe is launched over claims he leaked info to Epstein. He quits Lords as furious Prime Minister hands dossier of evidence to the cops. Charles must now face questions, is what it says on the front of the National up in Scotland. And the Daily Star goes with, you've let your pants down, you've let your country down. And finally, the Princes of Darkness on the front pages of The Sun, and that's a picture of Andrew and Mandelson, probably the first time they've shared the front page, exclusive by Matt Wilkinson and Jack Elson. Disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor got the boot from Royal Lodge under cover of darkness as the Jeffrey Epstein scandal escalated. And that, of course, is the story that we told you about this morning, first thing, when we started at 7 o'clock, because Andrew has apparently been moved in a midnight flit up to Sandringham. And now that he's no longer in Windsor, I wonder if we don't have to now call him Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Can we just call him Andrew Mountbatten? Would that work? I don't know. Also, how about this? We've done Plank of the Day. We've done it as Emily Maitlis a bit earlier on. We'll put that out as a clip. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is, of course, that we will be returning the crane at some point or other to its rightful place. One here from David. He says, Mike, you're always banging on about democracy. We voted to get rid of the crane. Why are you doing a Starmer U-turn? I've got something similar, actually, from Olivia, who said this. You cannot bring the crane back. It was a democratic vote. It's like overturning Brexit. Wow. Crikey. Well, we had another vote yesterday. And as they say in the Labour Party, a vote is not... What do they use? It's only a moment in time or something like that. All I can tell you is that the crane and stroke Heron has clearly upset people. There's so many different arguments being made. Now, we've got Sarah Poachin says she wants it for her pond up in Cheshire. Some of you say we shouldn't send it up there.
We're worried about Donald's mental health.
We're worried about Donald as well, because we don't want to upset him, because he's part of our, friendship group. He's part of our organisation, and we don't want him to be upset about the fact that he bought us a crane and it turned out to be a heron. No, it was the other way around. Bought us a heron, it turned out to be a crane. So I don't know. Harry has sent me a message saying, "You're going bald, Graham," which is completely irrelevant at this moment in time. But, I'm 65 years old. I think I've still got quite a lot of hair for that. And probably you might say I've been going bald for the last 20 years, but it's never actually happened. What can I say? Are we ever going to be able to get you on Alexa or internet radio, Mike, says Rich? Yeah, probably. This is week 5 of this incredible organisational show, the Mike Graham Show. We've been doing incredibly well. We're getting more viewers every single day as that happens. Of course, we thank you all very much for getting involved. Please do like and subscribe to the Home of Common Sense. We've got 128,000 subscribers now. We're getting up to very nearly... I think we're getting over 6 million votes now, 6 million views, I should say. So we're doing incredibly well. So keep showing us all of that love as well. Coming up, we're going to talk to William Clouston, who's of course the leader of the Social Democrat Party, because we need to get his view on the mess that is now British democracy. William, a very good morning to you, sir. Is he there? There he is. William, very good morning.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. I just spoke this morning to Sir Gerald Howarth and to Sarah Poachin as well, and I sort of started by saying I can't quite believe how ridiculous our parliamentary world has now become. I mean, if I'd made this story up about what's happened in the last 48 hours, you'd accuse me of being a fantasist. But it's real, and it hasn't finished.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, Mike. It probably is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I mean, Starmer, the Prime Minister was going to fall anyway shortly after May, but he's a goner. He's absolutely. He has to go. What amazes me about this is how unpatriotic these people are who are governing this country. It makes me sick.
Yeah.
You have, instead of doing their duty and actually batting for us, thinking about the national interest, they're cozying up to financiers and fencing off and selling our assets. It's absolutely disgraceful. The morality of it, the lack of good governance, and we'll wait and see what happens to Mandelson. But I hope that legal action is effective if he's found guilty and he goes to jail. Frankly, I mean, look, there are so many headings on this: insider trading, illegal under the Criminal Justice Act, Section 52. You can go to prison for 7 years for that. And I'd remind your viewers that you don't have to profit from it.
Yeah.
You just have to pass on information that's market sensitive. And it appears that this man has done this.
Right.
So, we'll wait and see, Mike. But heads must roll. And we've got to have some political change as well as a result of this.
Absolutely right. Well, as I said earlier, Dan Hodges has written a great piece in the Mail today in which he's asked the question of how this could possibly have happened. And he reminds everybody that this story sort of first started gathering steam just before Donald Trump's state visit to the UK last year. And Dan poses the question that, knowing what we knew then, why would Starmer have not asked the Americans for any more information that they might have on all of this? The Department of Justice in America has got all of these files. They may not have known everything at that point, but surely the question should have been asked. He says there's only 3 possible situations. 1, Starmer did ask and the US authorities fobbed him off and possibly lied to him. 2, he didn't bother asking, in which case he's not fit to hold prime ministerial office. And 3, he did ask, he learned the truth and was told the truth and then decided to ignore it.
Well, we've got to find out. We've got to see all the documents on the vetting, because this is the top diplomatic post in the world.
Yeah.
And it was given to a man that associated with a convicted paedophile after he was convicted. So the judgment of this man, obviously Mandelson, is appalling. And the judgment of Starmer for thinking he can go back to this is just terrible. So we want we want every single document published so we know. And it's the old one, Mike. You and I are old enough to know. But it's the question for Starmer is what did he know and when did he know it? It's Watergate.
Yeah, exactly right. And frankly, even if he hadn't known about everything that we are now learning from the days of his time as business secretary to Gordon Brown, you know, what we did know, like the two previous scandals and the various other things that Mandelson has got himself involved in, surely would have disqualified him from the job of the US ambassador. In fact, Diane Abbott made that point very, very well, actually. And I know a lot of people are not big fans of hers, but have a look at what she said about Peter Mandelson.
Abbott, it seems extraordinary, I'm sure, to many people that you've had the whip removed, so suspended from the Labour Party for speaking out about your own experience and view of racism as a black woman. But it took the Prime Minister a very long time to sack the US ambassador over his links to a convicted paedophile.
It does seem extraordinary, but what seems more extraordinary to some of us is why did he ever employ Peter Mandelson in the first place? Luke may not remember, but back in the day, Peter Mandelson was sacked twice, and it was always for the same thing, sleazy goings on with multimillionaires. So why would you put him in Washington?
Do you buy the official explanation coming from Number 10 on behalf of the Prime Minister, who's yet to speak on this, that he didn't know when he stood up in the Commons on Wednesday?
I just can't believe that. I just cannot believe that the top civil servants that he has around him didn't say, oh, better show the Prime Minister this before he goes into the chamber. I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
And that's based on your experience. You've been in government. I mean, it is hard to swallow, isn't it?
It just doesn't happen. It's the biggest story. It's a possibly, it's something that might wipe out your career. And your civil servants say to you, think you should have a look at this? No, I'm astonished. This is a story in the US, it's a story here. And Mandelson says, he doesn't hint, he says, there's more embarrassing stuff to come. And nobody rings him up and says, Peter, what exactly do you mean?
The PM's going into the Commons in a couple of hours. Can you fill us in on this?
Yeah, I just don't
It's weird, isn't it?
I don't buy it.
And so that was not an unknown view in the Labour Party, even never mind in Parliament, of Peter Mandelson. You know, he was known to be a sleazeball. He was known to be a double dealer, a guy not to be trusted, a guy who was only in it for himself. You know, it sort of beggars belief, doesn't it, that that Starmer, in whatever circumstance, gave him the top diplomatic job in the government.
Unbelievable, yeah. I mean, what you always get in the Labour Party, and friends in the Labour Party speak to me about this quite a lot, is you always get factionalism. So there may be a degree of factionalism in Diane Abbott's position there, but she happens to be right. I mean, he's obviously a totally unsuitable candidate. It is not as if you can't find a decent diplomat that can actually bat for the country. I return to it again and again, Mike. We are governed. It's the morality of the ruling elite, which this reveals. Half of the governments we've had, well, virtually all of the governments we've had in the last 25 years have concerned themselves with fencing off British national assets, whether it's the railways or our energy system or anything else, and financial assets to foreign entities and taking a cut. I would ask, you know, look, your view as intelligent people, if your husband is being paid by Epstein, what is he getting in return? People just don't give people money for nothing, do they?
Right. No.
You know?
And again, who else is he talking to? You know, I've got many questions about what else he was doing back in 2009 when he was business secretary, but also what was he doing when he was ambassador in Washington? Because that is a very important job, very influential. He would have been rubbing shoulders with the rich and powerful of America, you know, feathering his own nest, possibly, giving them, you know, very important sort of internal documents from government sources. But here's the other question, and I've asked this to a few people and nobody can answer it so far. Is it credible that he, as a government minister and practically deputy prime minister in 2009, is it credible that he was able to send these communications to people outside of government without anybody in the security services knowing about it?
I doubt it. And actually, if it were the case, it would be odd, wouldn't it? The security services wouldn't. So, yeah, you're right back to what did people know and when did they know it? But it just appalls me. I mean, the nature of it, the extent of it is staggering. Tim Stanley had a podcast on this and was talking about the nature of some of the information that Mandelson gave to his colleague. You know, the Euro bailout, apparently, early information about the Euro, that's market sensitive.
Yeah.
You cannot possibly. The idea that if you knew about that you couldn't profit on it is just beggars belief. So there's loads of layers. We need to find out, Mike. But another thing that people, and I'm not accusing anyone of this specifically, but another thing that SDP members on group chats and things are talking about is the question of blackmail.
Yeah.
Is the question of, so many odd decisions being made that are not in this country's interest. And you've got to ask yourself, what have certain people got on people to make them do things that are not in this country's interest or in the interests of our citizens? And it's happening a lot. And it's very weird. But anyway, I think it's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We just need to keep on pushing and find out.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, my worry today, for example, at Prime Minister's Questions is that Starmer's going to get up and say, well, I'm sorry, because there's a police investigation currently going on, I can't say anything about it, which of course is rubbish because there's a lot he could say about the police investigation because it's only just begun and he's never going to prejudice a trial. I spoke to Stephen Barrett, the barrister, this morning about that, and he confirmed that it is not in any way, shape or form going to prejudice any kind of trial to have a conversation at PMQs. But clearly, there needs to be a massive investigation. And I don't see how, as you say, I don't see how Starmer survives it. I just can't see it.
Well, so Kemi Badenoch is, whatever you think of the Tories, Kemi Badenoch is doing much, much better at PMQs, much, much better across the Matchbox. And she's relaxing, and I think she's probably enjoying herself. So, but yeah, on that point today, the question she can ask the Prime Minister is what did you know? What was in the vetting when you made the decision? Because it was his call to appoint Mandelson as US ambassador in Washington, UK ambassador in Washington. Well, that's what she could ask him. That's nothing to do with the trial. It's to do with what his accountability is and his judgment is. And it's his judgment that is in question. That's what it'll do for him. Yeah.
Well, you might remember, and I was hoping to have it, but I don't think we have got it, unfortunately, today. But the video of Starmer when he went to Washington, and made that sort of what he thought was rather clever joke about Peter Mandelson, where he said, we come to the capital city of America, where there's a new boss in town. Some people love him, some people hate him, but we just know him as Peter. And then he did this kind of horrendous kind of a little sort of weird laugh that he does, and everybody was lauding him. We had Darren Jones earlier on talking about what a great ambassador he was going to be when he was appointed. David Lammy talking about how brilliant he was going to be. And it's almost though they're willfully ignoring the fact that, he's got this, he's called the Dark Lord, for heaven's sake. It's almost like you can see it before your very eyes, what's going on.
Yeah, no, the clips are interesting, aren't they? And poor old Mastermind gets virtually everything wrong, doesn't he? What an embarrassment he is. They don't look good, but as I say, the clips are, what's revealing about it are just the very, very basics. Well, how can you go near a man that associates with someone after they're convicted? He's convicted in 2008. Yeah. And they all knew it, and they all did nothing. Apparently, that's acceptable. I don't think it's acceptable. No. And it's not in the national interest. The broader thing is what we all do about it, Mike. Because your monologue today, your prologue today, was excellent. I think the question for all of us is how do we get people governing this country that actually want to bat for the country and don't want to turn it into some sort of vassal state that is just beggared by financiers ripping us off all the time. And clearly, people like Mandelson and Starmer are not capable of doing that. The Tories have a pretty poor record historically on it, and we've got to do better. We must do better.
Well, as Stephen Barrett said this morning, it's also grubby because what are they doing it for? Are they simply doing it for money, for influence? For their own ego purposes? They're literally selling their own country down the river for the sake of a couple of nice houses and a yacht.
Yeah, or sort of, can you pay my? It's so demeaning and unedifying. Can you pay my fees to do an osteopath course? My husband wants to.
Yeah.
Have these people? They're just shameless. Can you imagine asking someone for that?
I know.
Can you imagine it?
Well, it's like the Sarah Ferguson email as well, begging for a business class plane ticket and 2 economy class for her daughters. And oh, by the way, I've got a friend who's got a great body. Maybe you'd like to marry her. You kind of, I mean, what sort of world do these people live in?
It's so bad. It's when I, a few years ago, Mike, when I got back in politics, I was involved in the 80s and around 2004 with the Tories, and I got back involved in 2017, 18, and what I found out pretty quickly around SW1 and the political elite, the people that run this country. I chat to people in pubs and things, and you'd say, "Well, what's it like?" And I say that's a lot worse than you think it is. It's a lot worse. These people are incompetent, and the morality isn't there. And above all, just get back to it. They're not batting for you. It's not in the national interest. Not care about the national interest, and that's why we're in the state we're in, because we're governed by people like this. Got to change.
Yeah, absolutely right. While I've got you on, and here's your opportunity to sell the Social Democratic Party to us all. I mean, we've got obviously by-elections coming up. I don't know if you're running up in Gorton. But there's also, of course, the big May local elections going on as well, where you're standing a lot of candidates around and about the place. People say to me, we love William Clouston coming on. We'd like to hear his views on things, but can we hear a bit more about the SDP's policies on things? So I don't know how quickly you can run through, say, your top 5 kind of, issues and your top 5 policies, but why don't you do that?
Yeah, well, we need to reindustrialize. This country has been beggared by deindustrialization. We need a trading policy, an environment that backs British business, build up the tax base. And we need things like energy abundance. We need the state to get back in the business of actually just generating energy. We don't need 80 different companies feasting off the public. We need the water industry in public ownership. And we need railways from Caithness to Cornwall run, by the state, and do some housing as well. But that's the offer. It's the only party that is basically going to get the state doing what it should do properly and nothing more, and then get the private sector to make the money and create a profitable environment so we can get a prosperous nation. But basically, it's the national interest. That's what it is. That's what we are. We are the party of the patriotic state.
Yes. And the big question, of course, and I mentioned this earlier on today, because it will be a story that gets lost in translation because there's so much around Mandelson, but a tiny single column on this page 2 of The Sun. So Keir Starmer is one boat away from Britain's worst ever record on illegal channel crossings. It turns out that nearly as many small boat migrants have arrived in his 19 months as Prime Minister as in 3 years under Boris Johnson. And people talk about the Boris wave. Well, it looks like the Starmer wave is even bigger. 65,703 have crossed the channel since June 2024. Obviously, people would ask, what would your policy be on stopping them coming, and where would you put them?
Right. Well, we are the only party that's on this that can actually solve it and has got a policy to do it. The policy is Ascension Island. If you turn up on the south coast unsolicited, you will be taken immediately to Ascension Island. You'll do 2 years punitive detention, and then you'll go back to where you came from. And that will stop the flow instantly. It will stop it completely. And it's an appalling situation to have a country governed by people that don't understand that you've got to have a border. But broadly, most people come. Immigration is largely legal migration, but the policy that we have is to end mass immigration. We've got to stop it. We've got to train our own public in every single domain to do the jobs that we need. If you look at something like health, Mike, no health minister in the last 30 years has even bothered to try and train enough nurses, doctors, clinicians. We need to train our own people to do our own jobs and end mass immigration on both economic and cultural reasons. So that's basically the policy.
Yeah, absolutely right. So we've got a big day today. Obviously, all eyes will be glued onto Keir Starmer. Do you think because there are a lot of people saying to me, will anybody actually be arrested? Will anybody actually get charged? Will anybody actually get convicted? Will this be a kind of an establishment stitch-up, effectively? And will they all kind of circle the wagons and go, oh, this is all terrible, this must never happen again, but we can't really prove anything really did happen, so we're just going to have to move on?
Well, I think there's some pretty good evidence already out in the public domain, Mike. I mean, as I say, I'm not a lawyer, Stephen Barrett is, but, we do have a Criminal Justice Act, and we do have something called insider trading, and it's there. So, I mean, if the police, I think we have to wait and see. I suspect if he's a goner, they'll all drop him like a stone and pretend they had nothing to do with it. But the facts are they did. They knew about a lot of his associations, and despite that, the Prime Minister thought, yes, he's our man, we should send him to Washington. And that in itself is incompetent. Someone that has judgment like that shouldn't be governing anything, never mind the country.
And knowing what, if they did know that he did in 2009, he shouldn't be near any international kind of cables. He shouldn't be near any international communications. He shouldn't be getting access to any sensitive information, which he's got a record now of giving away or selling.
Yeah, yeah. And as I say, I mean, who benefits, Mike? Who benefits? If you have mates and you give them information which is market sensitive and they profit out of it, you don't, under the law, you don't have to profit out of it directly if you've passed it over. That's the nature of the law, section 52. Read it. You know, so that's it. But you know, but he did profit, or certainly his household profited, because you know they received tens of thousands of pounds or dollars off this man to teach people to rub people's backs. So you know, come on.
Well, he's on the front page. He's getting a foot massage today. So I mean, God knows what else. I mean, that's the other thing is how much more of this is going to come out, and how many more people are going to be embarrassed and absolutely, you know, mortified. And maybe what they ought to do is all just come out and come clean now.
They won't do that, Mike. They'll deny it. They'll obfuscate. But it is interesting, and you know, I think it gets to the stage where there is just so much clear information there that people need a clean out, and you won't get it by voting for the same individuals. It's a disgrace. It really is a disgrace. And I on the optimistic side, I genuinely think there is a public mood now to try and, you know, solve this by turning against the elites that we have. I think that's very helpful. And you know, look, we've got 3.5 years until the next general election, and somehow, you know, we've got to get something put forward for the people that can actually change it and make it different. We have time and we can do it. And believe me, you know, because you're well in touch with everyone, that people aren't going to accept this anymore.
No, they've had enough. Simply had enough. William Clouston from the SDP, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. It's coming up to very nearly 9:30, which means only one thing. It's the end of the show. But we haven't quite finished because we've still got a couple of other things to do. 9:29, it says there on the time check. We've had the best viewing figures today of all time, by the way. So thank you very much indeed. If you are watching now, and if you were watching earlier, even better. We start at 7 o'clock. We finish at 9:30. We try and cram as much in as we can. There might become a time when we get to 10 o'clock and we do a 3-hour show. It's looking more and more that way. We've got Plank of the Week coming up, of course. We've got Plonk of the Week as well. We've got so much going on. And you just couldn't ask for more news. We really couldn't get any more news. But we also have, of course, a great interest in cranes and herons. And I think we haven't done Heron of the Day yet, have we? No. Should we do Heron of the Day to finish up? Neck. And there's one from Julie, who says, our impressive heron statue in Castletown in the Isle of Man. Now, isn't that cool? Do you know, I've never been to the Isle of Man. And what a beautiful S-shaped neck that thing has. That really does set it apart from a crane, in my view. But, you know, I'm no expert. Are we going to replace the heron at any point, Pooch? Or what are we going to do? Is it something that we can do before the end of the show? Are we going to try? Pooch very kindly escorted me to the bins yesterday, and we managed to find the heron just before the people took it out. So if you watch carefully, you'll see him. His legs have fallen off. The heron is literally the heron is literally now in 2 pieces. What can he do? He's got a bag over his head because you'll never see Pooch's face. He's like the Stig. You'll never see him. There he's trying to put the old heron together. Maybe put him on the shelf.
Yeah, it's not easy when you've got a bag on your head.
No, I can see. You know, that's probably another picture that we'll see coming out from the Mandelson files of Mandelson with a bag over his head. No doubt. Pooch, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all of you for watching. Thank you to Charlotte for setting everything up, of course. Thank you to Donald for the heron stroke crane. We'll be back at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, after which time, who knows what will have happened, because we'll have had Prime Minister's questions, which is midday today. I'll give you a commentary on that later on, I think. This, of course, is the real home of common sense. And there's the heron back in his rightful place. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.